Good evening. I now call the East Lyme Zoning Commission regular meeting of September 2nd, 2021 to order. It is 7:32 p.m. And at this point, I would ask everybody to please stand in honor of our great country with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everybody this evening. We have a pretty full house here. That's a bit unusual as of late, especially with what we're experiencing in the country over the past year. Everybody is required to wear a mask inside the building. Just as a matter of housekeeping, cell phones, if you would please turn those off or put them on vibrate, that would be appreciated as well, so we can avoid any undue interruptions during tonight's meeting. With that said, I see we have a five-member commission. I believe we do not have an alternate present tonight, so at least at this point in time, is Mr. Liska here? Yep. Mr. Liska, if you want to go ahead and sit, that'd be great. My apologies for not recognizing you. It must be the face covering.
It's the mask.
Thank you. Okay. So we'll begin as we always do with public delegations, which is time set aside for members of the public to address the commission regarding items, topics, subjects that do not, I repeat, do not appear on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone from the public this evening that wishes to address the commission regarding items, topics, subjects of interest that do not appear on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we will move right into our public hearing segment of tonight's meeting. And I believe there is just one. And item number one, and the only one, is the application of Harvest Christian Fellowship of Niantic Incorporated for a special permit for a church religious institution on the subject property. Said parcel is located at North Rydebrook Road, East Lyme Assessors Map 24.0, Lot 76. I will note the legals have been run for the record. Is that correct, Mr. Mulholland?
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. We do have a zoning official memo that we will read into the record, and once we've accomplished that, we will at that point hear a presentation from the applicant. Mr. Secretary.
Thank you. Dated September 2nd, 2021, to the East Lyme Zoning Commission from William Mulholland regarding special permit application Harvest Christian Fellowship of Niantic Incorporated, North Rydebrook Road, Assessors Map 24, Lot 76. The applicant is applying for a special permit and site plan approval to construct a church at property referenced above. The proposed building would be an 8,430 square foot in area with 72 parking spaces on a 21-acre parcel. The site has substantial wetlands which required a review and approval by the Town of East Lyme Inland Wetlands Agency. This permit was issued on February 8th, 2021. The applicant submitted a site plan which was reviewed by the town land use team. This group is composed of the town planner, inland wetlands agent, the town engineer, town water and sewer engineer, zoning official, fire marshal, and other pertinent town officials. The technical review of the substantial package is to ensure compliance with our regulatory requirements. The team comments were forwarded to the applicant's engineer and were subsequently addressed. The zoning regulations under section 20.1.2.a permits churches and religious uses by a special permit in any zoning district in the community. The use is also subject to section 25.5, the table of minimum controls for a specific special permit, which does not contain any additional criteria. In addition, the applicant must comply with the requirements of section 24, site plan, and section 22, parking. The applicant is here this evening with their professionals to present the application, which addresses all of the noted requirements. In conclusion, it is my view that the applicant has met all of the applicable applicable requirements of the zoning regulations. The commission will need to evaluate the application with regard to the special permit standards in section 25 and determine whether the applicant is compliant.
Good evening.
Good evening.
If you would just state your name and address for the record, please, and we'll be happy to hear the presentation. Thanks.
Absolutely. Hope everyone is well. I know we had a crazy storm last night. A lot of people have flooded. Hopefully, obviously, you were able to get out of your neighborhoods. Kids didn't have school today, so it was a pretty big storm. 3 days in, 3 days out. So, for the record, my name is Joe Wren, professional engineer, owner of Indigo Land Design in Old Saybrook, with offices at 40 Elm Street. Let me know if you can't hear me well enough. It's a little hard with the mask.
You're fine. So far, so good.
With me tonight are several professionals and a couple representatives from Harvest Christian Fellowship. We were asked not to bring the entire congregation here tonight. They're obviously all in support. So there is one member of that congregation that will be speaking for all of them due to obviously space and COVID and mask wearing and everything else. So with us tonight, I introduced myself. We have Pastor Randy Hyde that's with us. We have Mr. Scott Long from Harvest Christian Fellowship. Sylvia Rakowska is from DeZello, Pickett and Allen. She's a land use attorney. And we also have Dave Sullivan from SLR, formerly Malone McBroom. He's our traffic engineer. We were asked also to kind of stay on point, keep it brief. So we have a very brief outline. We want to show you as much information as you need in order to make a decision moving forward, but with no extraneous information. So I will be doing the majority of the presenting, and then when necessary, the other professionals will come up and speak in their place. So to start off, the applicant is Harvest Christian Fellowship of Niantic Incorporated. As stated in Bill's memo, we're applying for a special permit for a church in a RU40 residential zone under section 20.12.a as stated, which allows a church to be constructed with a special permit in any zone in the town. As a matter of housekeeping, we did post a sign as required under section 25.4.3-1 on August 17th, which is more than the 15 days prior to the hearing date as required in the regulation. The sign was 4x4 in size. We did submit photos via email to the town on the day of to record the date that it was posted, along with a couple of pictures of the sign posted in its location, just for evidence of posting.
Thank you, Mr. Mulholland.
With that, to start, I would like to introduce Pastor Randall Hyde, just to give a very brief history. He does know that just 5 minutes or less, correct? And then Scott Long from Harvest Christian Fellowship will also say a few words as far as the proposed use and the statement of use that was provided in the project narrative with the application. So without further ado, I'll ask Pastor Hyde to come up, and then I'll continue from there with the site conditions.
Thank you, Joe. He said 5 minutes or less because he knows I'm a preacher.
And Pastor, if you could just state your full name and address for the record before you begin, that'd be great.
Yes, my name is Randall Hyde, 17 Middle Street in Waterford, Connecticut. I want to thank all of you very, very much for allowing me to come and allowing us to come and speak before you very quickly because it's short time. This is like a dream because as a young man when I started here, I thought that everything was going to fall into place, and nothing has. And I kept getting older and older, and things changed. Thank you. 17 years ago, I stood before a group of individuals just asking for permission to rent out a building. I thought that was going to go very smoothly. It took many, many years, and now finally I'm here. I'm sorry for being choked up. But it's been a long time coming, and I moved here with my wife many years ago and 4 children. We raised them. I painted to make a living. We started off in the Connecticut Yankee Hotel, which is now the Stop and Shop. We moved to Niantic Cinema. We moved to the Pennsylvania Avenue and Chesterfield Firehouse, and I tried to preach as the horns were going off. And then 5 Freedom Way, I pastored and to the present here. The church was started in '94, and all of our services are outside of the building. They're not on the grounds. They're actually in the community. We believe that we're not to hold things for ourselves, but we're to go out and to minister to people and encourage people and give to people. And so the activities are not going to be on the grounds except for worship. And so twice monthly we have met at Bridebrook Rehab Facility, but that's been suspended due to COVID. Harvest festivals at the various schools, not on the grounds. Food pantry. We've also operated nonprofit Christian bookstores free on Pennsylvania Avenue here. We have partnered with Care and Share during Thanksgiving, blessing families. East Lyme Days, we've given up to 5,000 free bottles of water, I think a couple times, and then the others were under 5,000. All of that was free. And we have an ecumenical Easter sunrise service we're involved in. We're involved in the National Day of Prayer down at the town green. We support groups like depression and rejection and loneliness, and we have services where we have groups that we meet like that. I've held Victory Over Depression conferences at Waterford High School. My mother was an alcoholic and a drug addict and struggled with all of that. I've had local spots on the radio to encourage people not to give up, meaning commercials, and the church has paid for that. We have monthly marriage seminar classes because marriages are struggling. People are hurting nowadays and marriages are struggling. And then we have biblical counseling and other counseling things that we're involved in. Our heart at Harvest is not to build big buildings. I'm not going to be a big guy. It's to reach people. I've been around hurting people all my life. I was a hurting person. God's still healing me, and that's what Harvest is about. We go down into the city, New York City, in the roughest places of the city, and I take groups and I teach them how to talk to people and how to care for people. And we've done that for many, many years, since 2012. We support Malta Homeless Ministries and support CareNet in New London for unwed moms. We financially support Samaritan's Purse, and we who mobilizes teams during disasters like we have had. And then we support organizations that fight against sex trafficking. That's widespread in our country. People are hurting. And so that's what this ministry is about. It's hard to meet in a storage unit. People won't go to storage units, and I understand that. And our goal is to help people. And so we're asking for a place to worship. We're asking for a place that we could just meet. And we're going to do the ministry outside, because that's where the people are. Most of the people will never come into that building. But we want to go out there. And so I just want to say that very quickly, and just wanted to thank you, and sorry for getting so emotional. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Scott Long. My address is 34 Legendary Road, East Lyme, Connecticut. And I am a elder at the church, and just wanted to give kind of a rundown of the uses of the property. You have this in your writing, your materials, and anybody who wanted to print them out has them also. But I'm going to give you just a basic outline of how we use the property on a weekly basis. included with that will be like cars and people, the number of cars we expect or have seen on average during these weekly. This count was done over a month-long period earlier this year. On Sundays, we do a service basically from 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m., which includes a Sunday school for adults and the worship service and the sermon itself. We generally see about 22 cars currently and about 58 people attending, including children with that. On the first Sunday of every month is a special Sunday. It's our Communion Sunday, and we also have potluck. And so that time would extend out to about 1:30 on the first Sunday of each month. On Mondays, we do not have anything and have not had anything regularly scheduled in the 11 years that I have been there. Tuesdays, we go from approximately 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Each Tuesday has something a little different, except for the fifth Tuesday of every month. Any month that has a fifth Tuesday, there's nothing on that Tuesday. But those would include the first Tuesday of the month would be a marriage refuel during the school time, and then usually nothing during the summer. There's men's Bible studies, women's Bible studies on different Tuesdays. And then those in combination, the averages on those are 13 cars and about 17 people. Wednesdays, usually there's nothing. Currently there is nothing, but we have had a recent class for about 12 weeks where we met from about 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. And there were about 11 cars and 22 people, including children, with that. Thursdays, we meet generally from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. There's 3 different events that happen at the same time. If you look on our website, people have looked on the website, it looks very busy on that night, but it's really just 3 different groups meeting all at the same time. And the groups are youth, which is our teenagers, our children ministry, which is anybody 5th grade and under, and then adults. So parents giving us their kids, they have their own teaching also. That happens every Thursday evening, except for special occasions, and that's usually approximately 14 cars and 33 people. On Friday nights, we again meet from approximately 6 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. That one goes a little bit later because we tend to talk after that one a lot more. This is our support group time. We call it Target 1010, and this is where a lot of healing happens in our church. We have usually about 16 cars and 29 people show up on these Fridays. And then Saturdays, only on the first Saturday of each month do we meet. It's men's breakfast. It's from 8 a.m. to about 10:30. There's about 10 cars and 12 people. Anytime we have food at the property, it's all potluck, so everybody brings a dish. We sometimes cook out on the grill, so no cooking is actually done. Joe Wren will talk about the plans. There is a plan for a kitchen in our place, but it's really a place to hold the food and serve the food. So to address other rare events that would happen at the church, Vacation Bible School would happen during a few days in each summer. We try to entertain these kids the best that we can and give them a dose of Jesus, really, and just teach them what it means. During good weather, we, like I said, have outdoor cookouts on those potluck Sundays. We generally don't do anything outside of that. And then more recently, when mandated, we have our services outdoors. We're now indoors, but if the government makes us go out, we go out. I'd also like to address something that was brought up in some of our meetings with ancillary uses of the church. We have never rented out our church or the space for any functions, including weddings, and we have no plans to start. And that is all I have to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and again, for the record, Joe Wren, and I'll just go through the existing site location and the site plan quickly, the existing and the proposed conditions, including lighting, landscaping, stormwater, and zoning data quickly. And then we'll bring Mr. Sullivan up so he can discuss the traffic. Since I'm here and the boards are there, do you mind if I flip the page and then use a pointer?
That's fine. That'd be great.
Sorry, it's difficult to be away from it without being able to flip pages and so forth. But on the cover sheet, we do have a site location map, so you can see where the site is located. It's an existing 21.7 acre residential lot. It's a remnant lot left over from the Nathan Hale Farms subdivision that was done nearly 20 years ago or so. And it's 21.7 acres. Historically, the land was part of Scott's Farms. Until the church purchased it, and even soon thereafter, someone was still leasing it and cultivating it, but it hasn't been cultivated in a couple of years now. We looked at the 1934 air photos. It was cultivated back then, and the same power lines go across the property as they do today. So on the property itself, we provided an A2 survey map in the record file that shows the entire boundary. Obviously, we can't show 22 acres on one of these 2x3 maps, but we focus on the development area, which, if you go all the way out to the outside where the silt fence is, it's 4 acres or less of the 21.7 acres. All the rest, the remaining land, more than 17 acres, will be preserved, not touched, not developed. This is the plan that was already approved by Inland Wetlands. We also have our health approval from Ledge Light Health District for the septic system. As far as site utilities, there's water main in Woodrow. So Woodrow Drive is here. This property does have frontage on North Brybrook Road, but it's mostly wetlands. Brybrook comes through on an angle across this property on the western side, and then crosses North Brybrook Road down at the corner of the property before the intersection of Woodrow Drive. Woodrow Drive is a cul-de-sac. It has 6 houses on it, including the 2 that also front on North Brybrook Road. And there's frontage at the end of the cul-de-sac here, which is not in wetlands, so obviously it's the preferred access point to the property. The property slopes up to the north. The position of the building, obviously the less amount of driveway obviously reduces the cost. The building was put here for a number of reasons. One, we do have wetlands, and we have a wetlands buffer. And we have several utility easements that cross the property. We have a power line, a transmission line that runs across the property here. And then we have a water line easement that runs from Woodrow Drive all the way up through the property up to Nathan Hale Drive. There's a couple of residential lots here, and that easement runs up to the road and into the road and connects the water main there. There is a water main in that easement. There's a hydrant at this location out in the middle of the field. There's another hydrant at the end of Woodrow Drive there. So if you look at the wetlands and the upland review area, at the time we got our approval, the end of last year, the upland review area was still 100 feet. They've since increased that. But between that and the utility easements, it kind of dictated the location for the church and the parking lot in front of and on side of the church. As I had mentioned, the slope of the ground goes basically from north to south. So naturally, water flows downhill. So our stormwater management areas are downhill of the parking and the roof. All of the impervious area drains to the stormwater management area. None of that impervious area goes off. That was reviewed and approved by the town engineer for no net increase in runoff from the site and being consistent with the regulations, the applicable regulations. The lighting, we do have, if you look on the site plan, we do have site lighting up the driveway, and we have some in the parking lot. Also, there are some wall-mounted fixtures, I believe 5 of them, on the front and sides of the building. All those locations are shown on our photometrics plan that was submitted to you as part of the application. They're also located on the site plan. And the pole-mounted fixtures, which have a maximum height of 16 feet, are all identified on the site plan as well as that photometrics plan. The mounting height of the wall-mounted fixtures is 9 feet, and those are mounted on the building with no pole. Yes. They're full cutoff. All lights are full cutoff. The wall-mounted ones, we did include specs in your application. We have those here if there are any questions related to those, but we did include a nice colonial fixture that is LED and it is full cutoff. The site lighting and the wall-mounted fixtures are. The photometrics plan, if I was closer I could flip the page. Hard to see from here. But all the foot candles are on there, and you could see the property lines in Woodrow Drive, and you could see that at the property lines there is no light trespass or spillage. It's 0.0 foot candles at the property line. And it is a safe average luminance throughout the rest of the site and the access drive. For landscaping, this is an open field. It has been an open field for many, many years. There is some brush along the edge of the wetlands on the western side, and there's some brush and trees along the wetlands on the eastern and south side as well. All of this area where we're doing the work doesn't include the removal of any significant trees. It's just overgrown brush out in the middle of the field. We've included several giant green arborvitaes here, the type that the deer do not eat and form a lollipop over time. And we also include several here. We have a planting legend on the site plan, and I believe there are 77 total trees, which 55 of the giant green arborvitae here and here, and 22 little leaf linden trees along the access driveway and throughout the parking lot. So in an open field where there are no trees, now we're adding 77 trees. Around the foundation of the building, we added 32 shrubs and grasses, flowering hydrangeas, and dwarf grasses around the foundation of the building. For stormwater, I touched on it before. Again, everything flows downhill. The roof drainage is directly connected with this roof drain right into the stormwater management area. There are 2 stormwater management areas, a main one, primary one, and then a secondary one. The reason for the secondary one is once we get to a point on the access drive, we can't get water to flow uphill. So this portion of the access drive that's too low to get it into the primary basin, all of that flow is directed into the secondary basin. If these basins fill up, there's an outlet control structure, and they meter the water out, but generally off of this hillside. Here, it captures all of the water that's flowing in this direction that's generated on site and any additional runoff that makes it to that direction. Mitigates it in these 2 basins for water quality and quantity. There are sediment forebays in both. We meet all the water quality volume numbers, and again, it was approved, reviewed and approved by the town engineer under the wetlands process. The new town engineer has no outstanding comments. He did provide a couple email comments that were very minor in nature, and we coordinated with him via email on those. For zoning data on the site plan, the sheet right before this, we have a zoning data table. I believe it's in the lower left corner. And if you look at that zoning table, we're not asking for any variances. We meet, or in most cases, very well exceed each of the minimum zoning requirements for the church in the zone related to coverage and setback and so forth. The parking lot is 72 spaces. They're all numbered. If you add up all those numbers, you'll see there's a total of 72. And the building is approximately 8,450 square feet. With that, unless you have any questions at this point, I'll have Mr. Sullivan come up and discuss the traffic report with you. That traffic report was reviewed by staff, and they found no issues with the traffic report. But Mr. Sullivan will go through that with you.
One question, is there any sort of contingency plan for additional parking should the church grow in membership, which it sounds like it's been doing over the years? Just more of a curiosity question at this point.
Yeah, very good question. On the plan, if you look at the parking data, I think we're over parked. We have more parking than what's required for the zoning regulations now.
Right.
So there is some already built in.
Right.
If they, especially since inland wetlands, we have it on east and west side, if they expand at all, they have to go through the wetlands process and then
Right.
come back to you for a modification of their special permit. So there's multiple layers of review if they do need to expand parking, but there is some built in.
Is the building on a slab or is there a basement?
No basement. In that field, it's cultivated for a number of years. It was a high-producing field. Generally has a shallow water table, even though the property slopes based on the compact till underneath, like we have in most of East Lyme. The water table is very shallow, just like all of Nathan Hale Farms. All of that is very shallow groundwater. But here, there's no basement at all. It's just on slab.
Are there any accommodations for living there?
No,
Pastor or caregiver?
no, right?
Anybody
No
going to
living.
live there at all?
No living, no
It's in a remote area, that's why I
yeah,
asked.
no rectory, none of that. If you add up the hours that Mr. Scott.
Somebody's talking, who's talking?
Right here.
Oh.
It's hard to tell because my mouth doesn't move, right? So if you go through the hours that Mr. Long went through,
Right.
I added up all those hours, and in the highest week when they have that special Sunday Mass and then they have that extra item on Saturday morning, it's 19 hours. Out of 168 hours in a week, they're only physically there with the church open and people there for 19 hours, so a little bit more than 10% of the time. in
That's
a
my
week.
point, there's nobody there.
There's nobody there. It's mostly.
So it's
mostly
an empty
vacant.
building. It seems like it would attract vandals or something.
There is lighting. The lighting will be on motion sensors. There's really nothing to steal or
You answered my question.
vandalize, unless they wanted to graffiti the building, but there's no way in preventing that.
One other question.
And the door's locked, right? The doors
Mr.
are locked,
Mulholland.
and we're not there.
The road that they're exiting on, is that adequate for this increased, increased passage?
There,
I would refer to the traffic engineer who's going to address that
Right.
issue and get up next. It is a town road.
It's a town, that's what I'm asking.
It leads to another town road, but I would suggest we hear from the
Yeah.
traffic engineer who will cover all of those materials.
I started that little barrage of questions, maybe jumped the gun, let you guys finish your presentation.
No, it's
here
okay. That
first,
was a
so, yeah.
very good question with the parking. And now, without further ado, we'll let Mr. Sullivan talk about traffic on Woods Road
Excellent.
Drive.
Perfect, thanks.
We have the opportunity to make a presentation later today, or just an ongoing discussion, or?
Can we ask questions?
I'm not sure who you are. Are you residents in town?
Yeah,
Okay.
I represent.
You'll be able to make a statement, yes.
Yes,
And if the applicant wishes to answer your questions, then they're
No, I would like to listen first.
perfect. Yep, your time is coming.
Good.
We're getting closer. Yep,
Thank you. I think you asked very good questions.
thank you.
Thank you. My name is David Sullivan. I'm with SLR, formerly Milone and McBroom. I'm a professional engineer and I manage the Traffic and Transportation Planning Group for SLR. Our office, where I hang my hat, is in New Haven, Connecticut, at 195 Church Street. We are asked to assess the traffic implications and conduct a traffic study for this proposed church. The scope of our study was fairly generic for these types of studies. We look at existing conditions. We evaluate what's being proposed in terms of things like the amount of traffic that it's going to generate, when it will generate, and what type of impact that will or will not have on the surrounding traffic patterns. So we did that. One of the things we want to do is look at the existing conditions. So the focus of our study, just so you know, was down at the intersection of North Bridebrook and Woodrow Drive, since clearly they're coming straight out onto Woodrow, so there's really not an intersection at that location which would need the evaluation. So we looked first to see what type of traffic accidents have happened there, what type of crashes. In the 3 years that we typically look back at, there were no crashes reported through the Connecticut repository for traffic accidents. So there is no obvious safety issues that were identified at that intersection. We then did a series of counts. We've been on this project for quite a while, and it's fortunate because we did collect our data pre-COVID. We did the data collection at the end of 2019, as a matter of fact, and it wasn't too long after that that travel patterns changed significantly. But we did 3 types of counts. One, we counted the intersection itself, and we also did an automatic traffic recorder count on North Bridebrook to see what the traffic patterns were there, the variations in traffic, and also what the speed of traffic is on that road. And then we also counted the existing facility where the church operates today to get a feel for what the travel patterns are for the Sunday services. So putting all that information together, we determined, as I think you heard when you heard what the events do take place here on a routine basis, it's really Sunday that we wanted to look at because that's when the highest amount of traffic would be generated. So we did that, and we counted the church, and at the time we counted, there was slightly more traffic than he alluded to, not much more, but we found 30 vehicles arriving for the service on Sunday mornings, and about 33 had departed. And that was in, I believe it was October of 2019. So then we said, well, how do we translate that? Now, when we queried the church, they told us, you know, we really don't have these grand expansion plans. And he said, well, let's take a conservative look at this, and let's compare the number of seats that you have in your existing facility versus the number of seats that could be proposed here. So we essentially doubled the traffic and analyzed what would happen if 60 cars were coming in and 63 or 4 cars were departing. So we took that conservative estimate, and then we analyzed traffic without that and traffic with that and look at the level of service. And this gets to your question, can the road handle the traffic? Well, what we found is clearly it could. We look at traffic operations in terms of level of service, and just like school grades, level of service A is very good. It means you are driving on the road and you don't have much delay. You could pretty much go about your business unimpeded. Level of service F is outside my office in downtown New Haven. You expect that you pull up to a light, you're going to have to wait. They have separate phases for all the pedestrians. That's level of service F. What we found is that with or without this conservative estimate of the church traffic, we would have level of service A exiting the driveway, or exiting Woodrow Drive at North Bridebrook. So the next thing we looked at was the sight distances, because that was critical. And one of the reasons we put the tube counter or the automatic traffic counter out is because we can get a feel for speeds. What we look for is not the average speed, but the 85th percentile, which means out of all the traffic passing, 85% of the traffic is going at that speed or below, and that is typically higher than the posted speed limit. So that's well, I've called it the Cadillac, the 85th percentile speed, but some people take umbrage to Cadillac, but posted speed limit is typically what towns are designing for and things like that. But when you come into place, you'd like to see if you can get the 85th percentile speed. So in this case, we had 25 miles an hour posted, and you need 280 feet to make a safe decision to enter the traffic stream. We found that the 280 feet is easily achievable in both directions coming out of Woodrow Drive. The second thing, for the 85th percentile speed, we found to be around 42 miles an hour. So for that, you need slightly higher decision time, so the cars have to be seen further away. To the left, you can clearly see beyond the distance needed for 85th percentile. To the right, there's some town land there, which could be graded to increase that sight line to essentially meet that 85th percentile or close to it. In our report, we indicated that this is a town road intersection. Typically, towns are responsible for that, but the church indicated that they'd be willing to do some work along that corner and do some regrading to improve that beyond the posted. The prior town engineer didn't see that it was the responsibility of the church, and that it did meet the posted speed limit, and again, there was no accidents there. I understand now there's a new town engineer, so our recommendation is let's continue this dialogue, and if there's something, some regrading or something of that nature that needs to be done out there, or you would like done out there when the church is doing their construction, they'd be happy to contribute to that.
Mr. Chairman.
It's kind of an important issue, yeah.
I will share that we had a discussion last week with the county and the assistant director of public works discussing that issue internally. So if this moves forward, there'll be further discussions and we'll see where that puts us. But we look at it as essentially a housekeeping issue for the town.
Right.
So yet to be determined what actually occurs.
Yeah. Sort of out of our purview, but it's in the town's interest
That's
to
correct.
enhance that sight line for safety purposes.
That's correct.
Right.
Enforce the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit.
Well,
There you go, start with that.
that's even better.
You take the sight line, you're taking people's yards, and I understand the town owns them. Got it.
Right.
Enforce the speed limit.
Yeah.
And again, Mr. Chairman,
I appreciate if people from the audience didn't speak right now. I understand you may have some things to say, and you're going to have an opportunity, I promise. But to that point, I mean, Bill, if you'd like to speak to that point just a little bit in terms of the sight line and, obviously the town owns a certain segment of the property in front of these homes, and maybe just speak to that briefly if you could.
Yeah, that sort of has been an internal ongoing discussion. As pointed out by the applicant, we've changed town engineers. The new one's been on board for about a couple of weeks. He has a very, very vast experience in the private sector. That's an issue for the engineer and public works to look at because it is a town road. And if they think there's a sightline issue that needs to be extended, they need to address that. And there were some earlier discussions on that, but again, as you point out, it's somewhat out of this jurisdiction and outside of your purview,
Right.
and to be addressed in the future.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good.
and again, I guess the only thing I would add or repeat is, the sight line does meet the posted speed limit, so it's not like there's some glaring deficiency out there. There's no history of it being a problem, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't report what the 85th percentile is, because that's typically the standard we try to achieve if possible.
Thank you. Sure.
Oh, I was just curious when you were looking at the traffic, if you included the 80 condos they're building on Bridebrook Road for potential traffic.
We did. So we contacted Bill's office back when we did this, and that was one of the projects we had. We call that the background traffic, which is the traffic that would be there when the church opens, if the church doesn't open, and then the combined traffic is the traffic that would be there, including all that other traffic, plus the church traffic.
And, you would consider not Bridebrook an arterial road, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So at this point, we're going to go to questions by the commission. We've asked quite a few, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, we're trying to move it along as quickly as we can.
No, you're doing fine. You're doing fine.
Efficiently as we can. So just to clarify, back to the sightline issue, again, Joe Run for the record. We have included in the plan set, we have sightline plan and profile looking in both directions. Coming out of exiting Woodrow Drive, looking to the right is the one that Mr. Sullivan was talking about, and that's this direction here. So if a car with a 3.5-foot height, which were required at the Woodrow Drive intersection, is here, looking uphill, the road goes slightly uphill. This is 400 feet away. There's clear sight line there. There's just this little bump of land on the property that's right on the corner. That's only about 60 feet long, and we would only have to grade about a foot to improve that. There are a couple of trees there. So that the property owner on the corner, even though it's in the right of way, might have some discussion with them as well. There is a stone wall. There's a partial like field stone wall there too that would change a little bit, but it's relatively minor. It's just this piece right here where we show the grading of that bump, and it's not very long. Again, it's 60 feet or less, and then it just drops off at a lower elevation along that sight line, and it provides 400 feet instead of the 280 feet. So there is some benefit there, but when I did talk to the former town engineer, Victor Benny, he did say that it's an existing town intersection, existing town roads. It's not a new intersection being proposed, and there's no accident history there. So he wasn't, at the time, he wasn't inclined to force the applicant to do the improvements. But now there's a new engineer, and it sounds like there's some new discussion, so we'll continue that discussion and do whatever is required.
Thank you.
Okay. Next thing I wanted to go through was the architecture of the building. The architect for this project is from Ohio, so of course not able to be with us this evening. If there was a Zoom platform, he would have joined in, but there's no opportunity for that. So he did provide a general statement. We asked him to keep it brief as well. Try to switch these best I can. So this first one is just an actual rendering.
Can you just speak in the microphone, please?
Sure. Well, to remember how that looks, I'm going to flip and go back.
You want me to flip, Joe?
That's okay. I think the color rendering has been up for a while. I think it's kind of clear. And remember, we also provided that in your documents and your packets. So that's an actual color rendering from the front of the building and the parking lot area looking at the building. These plans here are actual dimension architectural sections of all four sides of the building, the front, the rear, and then the two sides. In his email statement, again, brief, but to the point, he asked that I just read this in on his behalf. His name is Don Highlander, and he's an architect. I'm not aware of his address, but he is from Ohio. The building is designed to be harmonious with the neighborhood. The residential scale is about that of a two-story house. The massing has been broken up with the two shorter wings on each side of the auditorium that is in the middle. The building materials are typically residential. The exterior wall materials are siding with a wainscot, stone. The roof will be three-dimensional architectural shingles. Dormers have been added to accent the residential character of the building. The overall height we included on the zoning data table. I think the maximum height to the ridge is about 27 feet, which is equal to or slightly shorter than a regular two-story house with a pitched roof. In East Lyme, in your regulations, the way they count the height is to the mean gable elevation, so we report that in the zoning data table as about 21 feet or so, because it's at this mean, between the eave and the peak, it's at the mean. But even the maximum height along that ridge line is 27, which is below your allowable 35 feet by 8 feet. The spire does stick up above. It is dimensioned on the drawing up here. I'm not close enough to see it. I think it was about 23.2 feet, if I remember correctly. That's not included in the total height. There's no living space or living area in that. It's just an ornamental feature of the religious building. Not much detail on the floor plan, and you guys have this as part of your packet, but auditorium space, that's the highest part of the building, and the two wings are on the sides. There's classrooms and offices, and then the kitchen area that was mentioned by Mr. Long earlier. So as far as the materials on the building, we went over that. It is horizontal clapboard siding. Based on cost, the church will determine if it's vinyl siding or hardy plank siding. It will be of a light gray in color with a matching three-dimensional architectural shingle on the roof. The wetlands, I think, was mentioned earlier in Bill's brief, but wetlands approved on February 8th of this year. Ledgely Health District approved the plans for the septic system on March 11th of this year. The former town engineer, there were no outstanding comments. The new town engineer had a couple very minor things related to, if I can go back to that site plan quickly. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recommend Barely on the spire in section 20.12. The spire can occupy less than 10% of the roof area. It can be to a reasonable and necessary height as determined by the commission. So just for the record, that's in your code and you have that.
Okay.
So it should not be problematic.
Thank you for that clarification, Bill. The minor items from the new town engineer, there's a section of drainage pipe right in this area from the access driveway that goes in the town right away to the closest catch basin there. We had that as an HDPE pipe, and there's a requirement that all drainage pipe within the town right away be concrete pipe. So of course that's a minor change. We'll change that to a concrete pipe. Next one was the width of the sidewalk at the building. We went through this recently on another commercial project in town. I think when the town engineer was looking at it, I think he didn't see that there was a curb. There's a monolithic curb with the concrete sidewalk here. So he was thinking that there was no control of the car overhanging the sidewalk. So he was asking for an 8-foot wide sidewalk along the building. But we do have a curb there, so even if the car is overhanging 2 feet, we have a 6-foot wide sidewalk, so we still have a clear 3 to 4 feet of walking path, which meets code. The curb obviously stops the wheels of the car, and the most a car overhangs is anywhere from 1 foot to 2 feet. So that was his concern. Without the curb, the cars could extend, and we wanted the wider sidewalk to ensure that, but we do have a curb. And where there's not a curb, where we have the landscape, the handicap spaces, there are bollards with a sign on it, so that stops the vehicle from extending into the sidewalk. Lastly, the slope along the edge of the parking here, he noted that was like 0.9% or something in that range, and he would like a minimum of 1%. So we made an adjustment just to make that 1%, just made it just a little bit steeper for drainage purposes. Water and sewer, there were really no zoning related comments. Again, the water main is on here. There's no sewer. We do have a septic system located here just west of the building. And again, that was approved by Ledgelight. Lastly, we did get some review comments from the fire marshal. And I would just like to go through those with you, and then that will end our presentation.
Can I just ask you a question?
Yes, of course.
Did you address the conditional approval on the LLHD and what the conditions are? You're
I
addressing
do
those?
have that. Let me grab that. Usually when a health district provides an approval, the plan is approved, and then usually there's conditions that are either standard or taken care of during construction. So let's see. 1 and 2 on the bottom are standard. Taking into consideration future. Yes. So 1 and 2 are kind of standard comments, and those are incorporated into the plan already. Those are just general common comments.
The recommendations versus that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, the 2 on the bottom, the 4 on the top. If you have this document, the original stamp and signature from the PE. Of course, we already took care of that. She has that. Without the stamp, original stamp, it's just not a formal approval, and of course that has to happen before she'll grant a permit to construct. Number 2, the roof drain is not to be backfilled with free draining material. We do have a note on the plan. The roof drain, again, extends from the building down here. She just doesn't want that to be backfilled with something like crushed stone where the septic water could get into it and run down to the basin. And that's standard. It will be backfilled with the same material that's all around the septic system itself, so it won't be more free draining. The as-built, that's a typical condition. That's after the septic system is built. It's an as-built map showing where it is for future reference. And the last one is also a standard comment about the weight of the manhole, so someone in the parking lot can't lift the manhole and jump in without special equipment or the strength to do that. So that's standard. That's on the detail that we have, but that's a standard comment on all these reviews. From the fire marshal, just to wrap everything up, the first couple of comments that he has regarding a fire alarm system and automatic sprinkler. So the fire alarm system is already incorporated, will be incorporated, has to be by fire code and building code, full enunciation and all that. That will be part of the plans. It has to in order to get a building permit. Automatic sprinklers aren't necessarily required in a building that's less than 12,000 square feet. This building, as you know, is around 8,500 square feet, so much less than the 12,000. He talks about the occupancy of the building of 300 or more persons based on the square foot of the space. Obviously, there's no plan to have 300 people in there, but they base it on the space inside the building. And what I was told by the architect to respond to this question is they're able to compartmentalize the building and have a 2-hour fire rating between compartments inside the building. And if they're able to do that, then the occupancy goes down and it will be less than 300 and they won't have a need for sprinklers. If whatever is required in order to get a building permit, they will do. So they will meet the code whether they compartmentalize or do sprinklers. Their choice is not to do sprinklers based on the low occupancy of the building and the cost to do so. But if it is required for some reason to meet code, they will do that and comply, of course. The next items are related to the site. I just want to go through these quickly so you understand each one. The first one, number 5, asks for the access road to be obstructed width of not less than 20 feet. The entire access drive is 20 feet wide. There are no shoulders. There's no parking allowed on there. The only parking are in the spaces that we have up there. So they have the full unobstructed 20-foot width. Vertical clearance of 13'6". There are no trees overhanging this. There are power lines that have come across here, and we did look into that. The power lines out there are pretty high, so we don't have any vertical restriction in that location. He says that will be field verified. Next, the dead-end fire apparatus access road, they always like a turnaround. So our thought on this site is if there was a fire issue at the building, they come up the driveway, they're able to make a right or left turn here and straighten out, and then they could back up into the other piece where they didn't pull into, and then pull out straight. He goes on in this comment to further mention this, what he calls a dead-end zone. So if the fire truck has to get up along this side of the building, how does it turn out? So one answer to that is to provide a 120-foot long paved area that will get very little use. We will continue to discuss this with the fire marshal, but we feel if the truck was parked here where the building is, they only have to back up a little ways to get here and be able to pull out forward along the access drive. We are not forcing them to pull all the way in and back all the way out on that long access road. We feel that there's adequate turning in here, and we'll review that with him. Number 7 is just about approved signs, saying that there's no parking, and whatever he requires along this access road for no parking signs, we will comply with that. Number 8 has to do with the location of the hydrant. There is an existing fire hydrant out in the field somewhere over in this location. He says in his comment that it's more than 100 feet from the edge of the road, but it is not. I scaled it today, and it's approximately 55 feet from the edge of the road. So that may be close enough to the edge of the road for his use. He says that if it's not close enough, he would like it to be relocated to this island. Remember, the water main is right here, and that existing hydrant is close to that water main that goes through the field. So that would have to be extended with a 6-inch main up to that point if he requires that. But again, we'll further discuss that with him because it's almost half the distance closer to the road than he thought in his review. Lastly, he was just asking about propane, and I'm not sure if we got that far. No propane at all. So I'm told by Mr. Long that there will not be any propane, so comment number 9 is generally not applicable. So that goes through all the approvals and the comments that we have to date in our presentation. If you have any questions for us, certainly more than happy to entertain and move on.
Oh, I just have a couple quick questions.
Sure.
Are there any kind of chimes or noise that will be coming from the steeple? How some churches ring chimes at certain times, or?
We don't have any intention to have anything like that.
Okay, another question.
Bells and chimes.
Bells, chimes, okay. Noise.
Okay. And I was just curious if out on the road, is there any kind of signage for the church, and if so, what would it be?
That's another good question. Signage on North Bragg Brook?
We've discussed it, but we haven't.
Could you move up to the microphone for me? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Yes, we have discussed it briefly, but there's no real way to have decent signage to get them to anybody to come up to our street. So our advertising is going to be through internet and yellow pages and all the other existing forms.
And any signage you do will be in conjunction with, it'll be with the regulations that we have.
That will be a separate application in the future if they do a
And
sign.
staff will ensure that signage is appropriate for the site.
Yes, and anything at the intersection, as we talked about before, you would never want it to block sightline.
Sure.
So that's another thing to consider.
I'll just note for the record that off-premise advertising signs are heavily regulated and generally prohibited. But when the time comes, if it comes, we'll look at that and take appropriate action and have a discussion.
And just for the record, that was Scott Long from Harvest Christian Fellowship.
Yep. I have a question for our zoning official, just from a staff perspective, from your perspective. Were there any concerns, any traffic concerns at the staff level, independent of obviously the traffic study that was contracted by the applicant with the
So I think
the
some of
gentleman
our
that did the
internal
study.
discussions during our town engineer and the director of public works looks at traffic. As the commission knows, traffic, off-premise traffic, offsite traffic is not necessarily the purview of the zoning commission.
Correct, correct.
Your purview is the site. But with that said, certainly we've had some internal discussions amongst the land use team because we are always interested in that. And as you may recall, on a previous application, we were looking all the way down to the intersection of 156 and North Bradbrook. So we've had some discussion and we've had some testimony in previous applications on that. We don't have any internal concerns. The only thing that really came up was that little 60-foot node of sightline that's already been previously discussed, and that will be worked through with our engineer and their engineer and the property owner and the director of public works.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Was there any concern about how close it was to the wetlands?
No.
Okay.
It's a town road, it's an arterial road, and the access road is also a town road. And if you look at the town's comprehensive plan, which is the zoning regulations and map, it essentially has zoned all those areas, as you noted earlier, in section 20, which is up to the zone subject to the special permit process.
And as far as the site, they've got their inland wetlands approval. It was quite a process, and here we are, so.
Quite lengthy,
Yeah.
months, I believe, and so we have that in place, and this is the last piece separate from the building permit, should this commission give a positive nod.
Thank you.
Again, Joe Wren for the record, a couple things there to mention. We only were in front of inland wetlands a couple of months. There were canceled meetings in between for a couple of months, so I believe we started in September. The meetings in October, November were canceled, went back in December. It was a public hearing. It was deemed a significant activity due to public interest, so that we had a public hearing on that as well. That was unanimously approved, and it was made official in February, I believe, were the dates. There are wetlands here and here, just for your knowledge. We're actually taking the runoff from the site. They were cultivated fields uphill of the wetland for many years, so all the fertilizers and everything else that made its way into the wetlands created a lot of invasive species and so forth in the wetlands. We feel that we're actually improving that because we're taking all of this area, bringing it down through these stormwater management planted basins, just like the ones that you see in all of our newer developments. Connecticut Orthopedic over there has a nice one. Runoff goes off of the parking lot into there, treated by the vegetation before it flows out of the basin. These are both planted basins, side slopes and the bottoms, with certain species that allow the uptake of what they call nutrients in stormwater before it's released. And it gets released here, and then it still has the ability to travel through the entire 100-foot buffer before overland before it gets to the wetland. So there's no direct discharge to the wetland. One last thing I wanted to mention is that there are some areas that are cultivated field that are not part of our overall site footprint, and those areas are just going to be allowed to grow natural, grow wild, so it'll be a natural buffer, additional buffer than has been there historically to the wetland. There were really no major changes or comments during the wetland process. The engineer reviewed the drainage and everything was all set. There was an email from staff, maybe Bill recalls, I don't think I have a copy of it with me. Staff did review the traffic report. I don't remember which staff, whether it was Director of Public Works.
It would have been the previous town engineer, and I believe the new town engineer also took the preparatory look at it.
Just with this application, there was a recent zoning application. There was an email that came back that said they reviewed the report and they had no issues with that report. I don't have a copy of that with me.
That was the new town engineer, but as please you know, we really haven't had any internal issues other than the discussion of site plan.
Okay, great. So unless there are any further questions, Mr. Dwyer?
Woodrow Drive, that's the only way in and out, so, right?
As proposed, yes. The other frontage along North Bradbrook we would have to go through all that wetland.
And you're not going out onto the right-hand side, or that'd be the east, to that development over there?
No, there's a neighborhood over here, but that's, again, there's some wetlands there, there's some utilities. No, there's no, this is the only access point off the end of
Okay,
Woodrow
thank you.
Drive. You're welcome.
I would just add, it's a very difficult site to access due to the wetlands. So essentially, the only way to access it is through the residential neighborhood.
Oh, yes, because I had a comment from people living over there, whether that you were going to go in and out of their neighborhood, over at that circle.
Well, on the east side you're talking
Yeah.
about.
Right.
So on the east side, no, there's no connection to that
Okay,
neighborhood.
thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any last or final questions as part of the public hearing from the commission before we hear from the public? There are a lot of folks here that want to have an opportunity to speak. So.
Chairman, I would suggest you take a 2-minute break.
Not a bad idea.
Starting with the public.
Okay. So we're going to take maybe a 2-minute break. That's it, little bathroom break for those that might need it. And then we'll start up with comments from the public. So for those of you who are here and wanted to be heard tonight, that's going to happen momentarily. All right? Thank you. Everybody grab a seat. At this point, we're going to move to public comment. I'm just going to say that I'm going to ask that people limit their comments to a couple of minutes or so. You know, we don't need anybody to get up there and just speak, you know, give us a lengthy speech. So a couple of minutes, hopefully you can say your piece, 2 minutes or less. And then at the conclusion, if your comments, questions haven't been addressed and you wish to have an opportunity to speak again, we may be offering that opportunity as well. So, all right, so that's going to be the format. With that said, why don't we start with public comment from people here who are in support of this application. Now, I know that the applicant did say in his opening comments that they would have had their whole congregation here, and sort of out of respect for the process, if you will, and knowing that the conditions that we're living in with COVID and everything else, that wouldn't have been maybe the most sensible thing to pack a room of this size. So this might be the appropriate time for the person. Has the person who is the spokesman who was going to speak in favor of this project been heard yet or not? No. Okay. All right, so why don't we start with that, and then we'll move to the other side of the equation. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Greg Saber, 8 Legendary Road, and I get the honor to speak on behalf of our church, our congregation, who can't all obviously be here, so we thank you for this opportunity to come and address you. My wife and I have been residents of East Lyme for the past 8 years, and obviously we're here to support this building project by Harvest Christian Fellowship. We were brought to East Lyme because I was a member of the Coast Guard. I'd done 20 years, and I finished my tour up at the Coast Guard Academy. And really the reason we settled here was because we felt that God really called us here. And really part of that calling was to be part of this church. Really God's prepared us to do this and put us here. To understand why I would make such a choice, I had a successful career going. I was doing great things within the Coast Guard, but I really felt this was the place for me. You really have to understand what Harvest Christian Fellowship means to the people who are part of this community and who are part of this church. It really breaks down like this. Harvest Christian Fellowship is a place where you have family, fellowship, and healing. We refer to our church often as a hospital. The world is a hurting place. We've all been hurt by it, and we've hurt others unintentionally. Those wounds are carried by us on the surface. They need to be healed, and God wants us to really heal us as He works with us. And Harvest Christian Fellowship provides that. It gives us a place to come and talk through these things and really work through them. Now more than ever, people of East Lyme need a place like this, somewhere they can talk and come and they can talk through the things that have hurt them and things they've done to others. Second, at HCF, there's freedom to be who God made you to be in Him. People are often scared that they won't be accepted, that they'll never feel good enough. Harvest Christian Fellowship welcomes those people into their doors. We have never turned away a person we never would. Third, Harvest Christian Fellowship is family and fellowship. There's so much confusion and fear in the world right now, and people need to remember that they're not alone. There are people who don't have anyone, people who don't have any hope, and Harvest Christian Fellowship has and will continue to be there for the people who need us. We've done outreach missions, as pastors mentioned before, things like working with those at Brybrook, the lost, the folks who are forgotten, the elderly there. We've worked in East Lyme Day and become part of the community, handing out water and really praying with and being with people of our community. We've gone and engaged projects out in the New London area and work with people who really don't have anybody visiting them and talking with them and telling them that God loves them. We've gone to New York City to minister to the homeless and to the lost. Our youth programs give hope to the kids in a positive place, an encouraging place to come to, a place to laugh, and a place where they can be themselves. Our evening programs provide love and support. People need to know that they're all going through stuff. They're all going through struggles. They're going through failures, and they have all the same issues. In sharing those struggles, we gain freedom and confidence that God has us in every situation. While Harvest Christian Fellowship has been around for 27 years this October, and we've existed without a formal place to call our own, a building that would provide a more appropriate home, you wouldn't expect a hospital to just continuing to work without adequate facilities, and you wouldn't expect a family to work without a home. This building provides that for us. We have repeatedly said that we could continue on and never get a building, and God will continue to do with us what we need to do. We would love to have a place to fellowship, to meet, because the current facilities are not optimal for that. We can't grow, and more importantly, we can't help others if we don't have adequate space for that. The first day I attended Harvest Christian Fellowship 8 years ago, I was quite frankly underwhelmed by the building that I went into. It's a storage unit. I come from a Catholic background. I'm used to big churches with big cathedrals and big stained glass, and to walk into a little storage unit was kind of a little underwhelming. The good thing is I married a good woman who, when we got in there, she said, "This place is for us." She could sense the heart and the soul of the people that were there. And they have loved on us nonstop ever since. And if you talk to every member of this congregation, that's what they would tell you that Harvest Christian Fellowship means to them. So I ask today that you approve this project. In doing so, you would make the outside of our church match the character and the soul of those who are inside the church. Thank you for your time, and God bless this committee.
Thank you. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak in neutrality, that's neutral, that may be ambivalent, just wants to offer an opinion that's not in opposition? We'll go to those that are in opposition right after that. Is there anyone that wishes to speak
I have a positive.
from a neutral point of view?
Oh, neutral, no.
Neutral, no. Okay.
Positive, no.
All right, very good.
He said
In
he's
su-
in support.
In support of?
Yes.
Okay, by all means. Just please state your name and address for the record, please. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Timothy Wilbur. I live at 4 Woodrow Drive in East Lyme, subject road, I guess, in question. My wife Arlene is also in attendance with me tonight. We've lived at Woodrow Drive for the last 30 years, and we've been fortunate enough to raise our 3 children in this town. And in 30 years, we've seen changes to this street, some positive, some not. We wish to take this opportunity to address this commission in support of Pastor Randy Hyde, the leadership and congregation of Harvest Christian Fellowship, in the journey through the process of seeking the approval and construction of a permanent home for their church. Since the construction of our home 30 years ago, the parcel in question has always been vacant land, but when it has been utilized, it has been exclusively farmland related and crop growing, even to the extent of digging of a man-made pond to the property for crop irrigation. The full parcel is at one point divided and sold for the development of the Nathan Hill neighborhood. And with the exception of the sale of one additional lot in 2002 for the construction of 6 Woodrow Drive, it has remained vacant for our entire time at the residence. We believe the approval and construction of the church by Harvest Christian Fellowship on this parcel of land would have positive effect on our street and surrounding neighborhood. It is unrealistic to believe that this parcel will remain undeveloped, as East Lyme is undergoing its share of development, evidenced by the recent clearing of land for the proposed subdivision on North Barbrook Road and multiple single construction lots throughout the town. Normal course of development. No parcel is safe from development, but we can certainly wish for the best possible scenario. Harvest Christian Fellowship has been the owner of this property since its purchase from Webster and Lisa Scott in 2013, with intention of someday building their permanent home. The purchase of this property by Harvest Christian Fellowship, we feel, was the best of many different scenarios, and I understand the cul-de-sac and Woodward Drive would be desirable as opposed to other options in which the property may be utilized for a housing subdivision, AFO apartments, and/or affordable housing, which would change the zoning approval dynamic significantly, requiring less stringent zoning approval to have the entire street extended. Harvest Christian Fellowship is not a new entity to our community. They have been a valued part of our town for over 25 years, conducting their calling, providing their comfort, offering their services and programs from basically a commercial unit in an industrial park since 2004. It is time they deserve a permanent home in our community, and I believe they have found a perfect spot. I certainly do not stand here to debate your regulations or to presume to know the zoning rules and regulations which may or may not apply, rather to just show our support for this application. Pastor Hyde is making the effort to take the concerns of our neighborhood into consideration and is and has been available to listen to issues, answer questions to the best of his ability, defer to the engineer's questions he cannot answer, and he has even taken the time and the opportunity to learn the history of our property. The impact will be minimal and in cases beneficial with a consideration of the needs and desires of the surrounding property and homeowners, and I am sure that any issues regarding zoning compliance, should they arise, would quickly be addressed. They have made a significant time and a financial investment in this property to make it not only acceptable to the surrounding neighborhood, but to retain functionality for themselves. I believe they will be an excellent and valuable neighbor and welcome them wholeheartedly, believing this will only make our neighborhood better. We would encourage the Commission to look favorably on this application and approve Harvest Christian Fellowship at this juncture to join our neighborhood. Let's remember, this area was once farmland and there was no Woodrow Drive at all. None of the 6 homes would be here without the approval to build them. This is all Harvest Christian Fellowship is asking, the opportunity to build a home for their congregation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. At this point, we'll move to those that wish to speak in opposition of this application. And you raised your hand first, and you've been patient sitting here. So if you would just step to the podium and state your name and address for the commission.
Yeah, thank you.
And just be sure to speak into the microphone, too. For those of you who aren't loud like me, be sure you speak into that microphone. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so appreciate this opportunity. I have no previous experience about the public hearing. This is my first time, so I don't know the layout, the process. So I prepare my presentation. I think maybe have some projector or whatever. So now I just work on my slide. So maybe later on I can, pass my presentation to you. Sorry, if you do not understand my English well, please, raise your hand and ask my question, right? So tonight, my heart is broken.
Can you state your name and address, please?
Oh, yes, sorry, yes. My name is Eve Su. I live in 6 Woodrow Drive. My husband, Stephen, he is there. So we are the owner of the 6 Woodrow Drive. Okay, exactly, I point out where my house. My house is right here.
Okay.
Okay? This one, I'm speaking.
Impact the most by
Yes.
this project.
Yeah, okay, Stephen, hold on. All right. So my heart broken tonight. So when I listened to you guys talking about, right, the church, so I went to church before a lot, right? And I know exactly how the church serve people, right? I appreciate that, right? And then you talk
Could you
about
please speak into the microphone?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
And just please address the commission, if you would.
Oh,
I know
yeah.
This is your first time, and I know you're nervous and you're doing great, but if you could just speak a little louder, pull the microphone a little closer.
Okay.
And speak directly to us, and everybody will hear you.
All right, all
Thank you.
right. Yes. So we listened to the church member talking about how the church healing them, right? How great a place. But my heart's broken because of this project. Actually, what they will plan to do will break my peace, break my heart. Okay, I would like to stay why is that, right? Let's talking about the town regulation, section 24, 25, right? Talking about the property should provide safe, efficient vehicle and residential circulation, right? And then you need to have, sorry, I want to cry anyway. So privacy, protect without loss of privacy, right? And protect, I don't know how to read. So it's talking about how to protect the neighborhood, right? If you build something new, you need to considering the surrounding, right? But from all the supported document that church, they provided, there's no one item talking about how impact our neighborhood, right? There's no, I looking at all these supporting documents, there's no one. So I so appreciate your question talking about how's the neighborhood, right? Okay, so I have my presentation today here. I'd like to understand a little bit the process, right? Tonight's the first hearing, right? So do we have any follow-up? So that's my question, right? So who will address my concern? I'm going to, ask some, present some concern to this project, right? So do you, the committee member or committee will address my concern or just, okay, if you just talk, right? And done, we approve, right? Is it that way or not? I am from China. I know how that two system work, right? So I don't want
After everybody's made their comments, the applicant will have an opportunity to perhaps address some of the questions and concerns that have arisen. So that would be the format. So at this point, if you could just tell us how this project is going to impact you and your property in your own words. I mean, I know you have it prepared, but I think that would be the best way to
okay, all right,
go about it.
All right.
Go for a little bit because she's so nervous.
It's okay, Stephen, I'm okay. Okay, I'm going to talking about
You want to stand up there with her, sir, as your husband?
No, so Stephen, let me take my turn and then you have your turn, okay? I'm holding this table, I won't fall, okay? I just want to present my concern, okay? There's 3 or 4 concern, okay? One is the safety issues. That church project put everybody in dangers, everybody, not just ours, but church member as well, the first. That's safety concern. The second is impact our quality of life. Okay, that project will impact our quality of life there. The third one is we are going to lose our privacy. Okay. The 4 is impact our home value. So the section 24 say, you shouldn't impact the home value there. Okay. So I'm going to one by one to say how that concern, right, for these 4. Okay. First, safety, right? So this is a cul-de-sac. Let me point out here what I'm talking about. Here, this is the cul-de-sac. So my house is here. We have a 6 neighborhood here. Okay, 6 house, very small. So this is the entrance here. Okay, I'm talking about here.
I think most of us know where Woodrow is.
Yeah, we know where it is. Your house is the closest house to this project. Is
Yes.
What you're saying? Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
So can I use that pictures?
I think
I would rather have you.
we are all familiar with the
Yeah.
neighborhood.
Okay,
So-
good.
I would rather have you state your concerns. You were telling us your 4 itemized concerns, and if you
Okay.
want to just say a little bit more about those, and then let some other folks speak, that would be great.
Okay.
You're doing great. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I will control my emotion, and I'm not cry, I'm not crash. Okay, so the opening, they want to use the access. It's not planned for a public entrance or access at all. That one, right, is for the post maintenance. what we see, because the post, electric posts is also there. So they have a potential, have a opening for those truck to do the maintenance. So that's usually, the cul-de-sac, right? Property will be connect each other, right? But my house and then the number 5, there's a little bit opening. It's not connect for the circle because need to have entrance for the post maintenance. So that's years long, always. That's for the purpose, not other. So not for, so there's, you can see the 5 hydrants over there in the center of the opening. And then you can see the traffic, the light and the electricity, Wi-Fi box, everything's there in the middle there. So if they want to make an entrance there, they have to move those to my neighbor. So that place, the opening is not for a public entrance design, okay? So it's very narrow, okay? And then this is a cul-de-sac, right? Actually, it's not a real cul-de-sac. My house own piece of land, and let me point out.
You can just tell us. You could tell us. Yeah, we're very familiar with the property.
Yeah. So the circle, right?
Correct.
My property own this piece, and then my neighborhood own another piece. So without our, donation, contribution, there's no circle there, right? So just say we have a part of the code, okay? So this is the cul-de-sac, right? Okay. Now, okay. The church entrance that plan to do just right next to my driveway, parallel. There's no buffer zone. Okay, you can see it. So this is my driveway, and this is their driveway. Just parallel. There's no any buffer zone there. And then they can't because there's no zoom, right? There's just a very small opening for the maintenance for the power post, power post there. So they forced to get an entrance there. Okay, so which means it's put my family directly in dangers. Think about my driveway here. Their driveway will be here. There's no any room for the buffer. The snow, they will dump into my yard, right? And then there's anything will be just happen, put my family immediately in dangers, okay? So we got the most impact for this project. And then this is a very long driveway for the church, right? You can see from the opening, they will drive all the way, very long, narrow drive, one entrance. There's no the other one, right? As our general knowledge about the public building or public gathering place, right? We supposed to have one more access, right? For emergency, for the flow, right? But this one have one narrow, very long driveway, okay, to the church, to the parking lot over there, right? So why I say put dangerous, not just for my family, but also for the church member. Think about that. If emergency, right? Only that place they can escape. If something blocked there, everybody will be trapped there. The fire trucks, very hard to get into it. There's no way for them to, over there, all right? So it's very dangerous. Put everybody in dangers, not just us, also the church members, right? Think about people, right, emergency, they need to get out, but there's no way.
I'm going to ask you to kind of wrap up your comments. You're doing very well. You've made several points. And if you could just wrap up, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay. So this is a cul-de-sac living, right? We play, we walk on the driveway. The gentleman supporting the project, the kids use the driveway. I mean the drive to maintenance the car. They sit in there to do all the car maintenance. They use that road a lot. That's the most used a lot. But with this church builder, right? And the whole thing's complete change, right? Because we have party as well. So when we organize our party and the neighbor, so all our guests cars are parking along the street. So full with that. If number 5 and number 6 have the party, the whole street already have the car over there. So it's you think about the jam, especially party in the Sunday and Friday, right? That's what the church will have the gathering, right?
Ma'am, I really need you to wrap up at this point in fairness to everyone else that's here. If your husband wishes to say a few words, state his name and address for the record. You've made several points, and we do want to give the applicant an opportunity to perhaps...
So can I have just one minute, okay? 1 minute.
I say 1 minute. Let me say.
Can you continue?
I just summary. And I researched...
Sir, you need to state your name and address for the record, and you need to speak into that microphone, please. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Stephen Xie, and I'm the co-owner of the 6 Willow Drive, and she's my wife and I'm her husband. And I spend a lot of time to study this East Lyme. What's that? That's the regulation, the county regulation, and section 24 and then section 25. I don't think this project meets some criteria of these regulations. Yeah, and this project impact the quality of our life. That's first one. The second one impact the safety. 2 major points, and 1 point, and my mailbox, and drive out of my property line, and then with the parallel of the church entrance, especially the entrance, it's very, very easy to get car accident, and that's the 1 point. Another point is the intersection of the Woodrow Drive and the North Bible, and that one, I think the gentleman traffic study has very clear bring up that issue, and that's the.
It's very hard to right turn.
The third one impact the privacy. The privacy. That's the regulation does not allow any project just impact the resident, the neighborhood of privacy. And the fifth one, and then just at night, there are a lot of just night activities in the church, and then normally they just get out the activities at 9 or 9:30, and then 10 or 20, and sometimes just almost every day have the 10 or 20 cars come out from the church. That's the only entrance in Widow Drive, and then the car make the noise, and especially the lights. The lights affect our bedroom. Our bedroom is just face to that driveway, the church driveway. And then the lights at night, the 9 o'clock or 9:30, and then at that time we just sleep. We are so sensitive about the light. If the lights on and then make us just awake, and then we cannot sleep all the night, and that's the issue. And the fifth one is potential increased crime. We don't know the church people. We don't know. And I remember one time the church, one church person come up to our house. I just asked them, do you do any support to homeless people? And because the church have a lot of activities support the homeless people, and we don't know all those people. Those people that come to that driveway, we don't know. That's potentially increase the crime. Just home value. So we're cul-de-sac, and normally the family resident in the cul-de-sac, and then just they have a safe, quiet environment. But now this church, so many people just come out almost every day, and then just make this COVID, totally destroy this COVID-set design. And then so just devalue our property value. I think that's my point.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah.
Thank you. You both did a good job. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And then can I add one point?
We're going to let some other people speak. You might have another opportunity, okay?
All right.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Sir?
you. I'm running.
Please state your name and address for the record. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Jason Urban. I'm a resident of 1 Woodrow Drive. Just to preface my conversation and my thoughts here and just reading through everything here, standard disclaimer, I've been a professional fireman for 26 years. So I'm looking at this building, and I'm looking at the occupancy, and I'm looking at the points of egress, and it just doesn't add up for me. And I get it, it's under code, and I get it, it's well within, and the fire marshal does have its concerns, but there's a lot of elephants in the room here, and I don't mean that in a derogatory term, please. So, first of all, the fact that it's an unsprinkled building bothers me. 8,000 square feet, not sprinklered. I get it, you're gonna do the proper compartmentation with the firewall rating, but you're still building an unsprinkled building. And then you have a hydrant that's off the road, and you have reservations about moving it and moving the main because it's more cost effective. Now, your secondary water source is at the corner of Woodrow and North Brybrook, which is a tremendous long hose lay, which would rely a lot of trucks to move up a narrow pathway to get to that building if the building's on fire. Not only that, we talked about the parking lot, and we talked about the trucks and the ability to make a three-point turn. From someone who's actually driven a fire truck in a congested area and driven it through, streets and then parking lots. When you have a full parking lot and you have a 53-foot long vehicle that you're trying to maneuver and position for the best position to fight a fire, to help people, a full parking lot, a narrow area, and the backing up and three-point turning is not exactly the best situation if you're in the beginning phases of building a building. It's not conducive to an unsprinkled building with an occupancy load that can vary. So, which brings me to my next point. Now we have the occupancy of 226 in the assembly or the church area. The parking is 72 parking spaces. So that, according to the math, is about 3.13 people per vehicle for the 72 spaces for the 226 people. But we're not talking, what hasn't been mentioned here is the fellowship hall. So in these buildings, we have the fellowship hall. Now, I'm looking at the building in the fellowship hall, and it's either, according to my calculations, 50 by 40 or 40 by 40, depending on how I look at it, or depending on the interpretation of the plan. So it's either 2,000 square feet or 1,600 square feet. So let's take both calculations here very quickly. Now, according to the NFPA, non-fixed seating, so like it is here with non-fixed, so I want to take a chair and I want to put it in a room, you need 7 feet per person. So that raises that 2,000-foot occupancy. That's 285 people that can occupy that room, in addition to the congregation area. Or if it's 1,600 square feet, it's 228 people that can occupy it. So if it's less concentrated, which is they put tables up, that's 15 feet per. And that's 133 if it's 2,000 square feet, or 106 if it's 1,600 square feet. So my point is that the occupancy has the ability to increase. From what I've heard from the church, I'm sure it's a wonderful place. Everybody speaks so highly of it. Why wouldn't more people want to come? All they've said was here, we're never going to turn people away, and we want the ability to grow. But the parking does not equate to the occupancy. So they have the ability to have almost, excuse my math here, 511 people at maximum occupancy according to the 7 people per in the fellowship hall in addition to the congregation. That's 170 cars if you use your math or the math, that's 3.1 people per car. 170 cars. If it's 454 under the 1,600 square foot, that's 150 vehicles. So where is it going to park? Where are all these cars? So even if the occupancy of 226 people in the sanctuary, are they all going to fit into just 72 vehicles? So where does the overflow parking go? It can't go on the wetlands. It can't go in the front of the building. It's either got to go down that narrow side road or into the cul-de-sac. So the overflow parking has to go somewhere. Now, as their occupancy grows, because they're building an 8,000 square foot facility, you don't build a 5,000 seat arena and be like, you know what, we only want to have 50 people per night and we'll be happy with that. No, you build it for your max capacity. So you build it for growth. And that's what they're doing here. They're building it to eventually grow. But the parking does not equate to the potential growth of that building. They could rent the hall. They say they won't, but they could. There's a kitchen in there, so they could have functions in there. It's built for it. And the occupancy of that can show that they can actually have something inside there. So they have the ability to grow and expand. You know, why would they not? Why would they not build such a large facility if they didn't want to grow? All they've talked about this evening, and I'm not disparaging them, don't misinterpret what I'm saying, is how they want to grow and expand in everything they've done for the community. And they've been limited by the small size of the building that they have. So now they're seeking a larger building with the ability to increase their capacity beyond their parking area. Why would they not expand? And where is the overflow going to go? And that's how it's going to directly impact our neighborhood, is the overflow. And even if they don't seek and want to stay within that limits of the parking areas, they could do multiple sessions. So the traffic volume will be the same, but it will be spread out over time, just to accommodate the extra people. So the fact that they're building such a large facility with such limited parking, the overflow will directly impact the neighborhood. And to me, it just doesn't seem safe. It's the bare minimum. You don't want to sprinkle a building because it's cost fine, the fire code allows it because it's underneath the size of what they require at 12,000 square feet. I understand that. I've seen buildings burned to the ground. I've seen multiple tragedies come from unsprinkled buildings, but I'm not here to debate that. But what I am to talk about is the fact that the entrance and the egress doesn't equate to a high volume number of people. If you're going to try and put a concentrated number of people, say 300 people, which you could easily, in one particular area with only one means of egress out, and even if there was an issue on Woodrow Drive and the cul-de-sac was blocked, those people are not going to be able to get out. And the problem is that even if there is a problem inside that building, when everybody's trying to go in, like I know I've done before, trying to get in, everybody's trying to come out, and it impedes and it slows down the process. So the fact that we're building an 8,000 square facility with the potential to grow and expand, and looking at the numbers here, possibly over 300 occupants at one time, the parking area doesn't equate to the occupancy. And the overflow has to go somewhere. And when it does it, it puts an impedance on the surrounding area, which unfortunately is the surrounding area. And that's what I have for that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Sir?
Hi, Stephen Wolf, 19 Nathan Hale Drive, the property to the north adjacent to the lot there, probably the closest actually to where the structure will be built. I have a variety of concerns, and I'll try to be brief with each of them. My first and biggest concern is looking at Section 25 of the Building Code 25.3.1.1, specifically looking at subsections D and F, maintain or balance visual relationships with building bulk, size, to its site, especially when viewed from a distant vantage point, maintain proportions between building height, length, width consistent with prevalent architecture. I guess just for impact. You've all said you're familiar with that area. Nothing looks like that. That is not prevalent with the architecture in the area. This building's over 8,000 square feet. That's 100% larger than any other single dwelling house in the area. Everything in the surrounding area is a single family home. This is essentially a commercial business as described here. And when you look at proportions, height, width, nothing meets that. I understand it meets the letter of the law for height, but that steeple is over 50 feet high, or about 50 feet high. That's a huge sight impediment. One of the things you notice from that picture, there's no sight line, there's no horizon, there's no trees. That's because it's a big block in the front of everyone's views that currently exist. So when you talk about home values, when you talk about the aesthetic of the area, that's clearly a huge impact. I also don't see any 72 parking lots anywhere near there. There probably are on 72 spots in all the adjacent properties combined. And per the last speaker as well, you're talking about an occupancy of 300 plus people. Again, that's 10 times what the surrounding houses amount to. So that's my first concern with that. Moving into under Section 5 of the Building Code, which is the RU40 district, there was some talk about the history of this land. It was agricultural. That's clearly stated under 514, which is permitted use. What's not stated under 5.1 or 5.2 anywhere there is churches. I understand they're covered under the special permit application of Section 20, but the fact that they're not highlighted in the RU40 district seems to suggest this was not intended. And I guess I would ask, in general to the committee, kind of a rhetorical question, is there any precedence of a church getting a special permit in an RU40 district in East Lyme? I mean, you can look at Google Maps. If you look at, residential areas, there's no churches that aren't in a commercial or mixed zone in this town, at least not that I know of. So, I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't see any precedent to that, and I think it opens up a really large question. In particular, one of the things I worry about is funding. So they're going to get a building loan. That looks like a pretty pricey building loan coming in. And if you look at the history of churches in recent times, especially in the United States and with COVID, occupancy is a problem, funding streams are a problem. And so how are they going to pay this off? And if they fail to pay this off, what can go in there? If this is a single-family house or something that's zoned for, like a residential area, okay, you default on your loan, the bank forecloses, someone else buys the home. It's a single-family house. If this defaults, what can go in there? A single-family home isn't going to be able to go in there. You got a 72-car parking lot. Who's going to rip up all that asphalt? The only thing that can go in there is another business. And the reason I call this a business is because that's what it is. I understand the nature of what we've been told and everything, but there's a nursery in there. This is a child care facility. Not asked for on the special permit is child care facility. That's not listed, but that's what it is. You have Sunday school. There's a nursery on the plans. This is essentially a child care facility and not stated on the special permit. I would say that should be actually on the special permit. When you talk about activities and stuff too, and this is why I question it, in the promotion speech for it, they called it a hospital. They talked about, a bunch of activities, which I think are noble and we absolutely need in the community. When you talk about drug rehab, alcohol abuse, criminal reform, homelessness, these are all programs they want to run and intend to run out of this facility, as stated. How can you account for safety and security of people in an area that's in the middle of nowhere? It's a residential area. And going back to a little bit of the aesthetics, it's dark there. If you go out in that field right now, it's pitch dark. There's no lights. They're talking about having lights on. They're having activities till late at night. Those lights are motion censored. Animals are going to trip them off. And there was a question earlier, okay, so they're not there, the lights go off. Who's using this lot if they're only there 19 hours a week or something, which is unenforceable after you approve this. But you know who's going to be there? People using the lot in a dark area, or the lights are going to be on. It's a considerable difference from the status quo and from what would normally be in this area. They also talked about services outside. You have several hundred spots inside, but that doesn't account for the stated outside activities, counseling, so there's noise concerns. Are you going to have temporary lighting if you throw an overnight event for a week or something? You're going to have tents, outside lighting, etc.? Sure. We could complain, but that doesn't change the fact that this is going to happen. I would also state that the number of people there, again, it's huge for the area. And I guess my final thing would be that it seems like we talked a lot about traffic egress, but we didn't talk about ingress either there. You're talking about how are people even going to get in and out of this to their homes when this is in session? You could have 72 cars. Even the traffic survey, you said you doubled it, but why not use 72 as your baseline? That's how many cars you have in the parking lot potentially.
Could you please address us?
Sorry, my mistake. It was a question. I think I'll wrap up with that. I don't want to take any more of your time. If you had any questions for me based on that, I'd be happy to answer them.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Who's up next? Again, I would ask those from this point, if you keep your comments to 2 minutes or less, please, and try not to be redundant. And if you want to say that you support a point or two that was already made, that's great, and maybe speak more uniquely about your own concern. Thank you.
Okay. My name's Doug Butkovich. I live at 2 Woodrow Drive, and I was really excited to hear this is the first time I'm going to have my property impacted by this, besides the extra water that was approved by the Wetlands Committee. So their wetlands plan puts more water in my yard, which right now, water last night, I can kayak or actually probably put a dinghy in my backyard and float around with the water that comes down from that open space that now I'm going to have asphalt and runoff from a building. So I was really excited to hear that for this line of sight. The other thing is I've lived there 17 years, and not once have I been behind another vehicle when I left my parking lot, when I left that road. Not once have I waited for another vehicle to turn right or left to leave that house. Now, up until what you're saying, or they were saying, doubled it, so 22, well, let's say just at 22, that's what they have right now. Had Pastor Hyde said, we're not planning on growing, so what we have, had another gentleman, and then the last gentleman that came up said, oh yeah, we're looking to grow, we're looking to grow. So you go with what Jay was saying about the max amount of cars, and that's going to at least double, if not quadruple, the traffic on the road, and then up to 9 o'clock at night. Only one person that I really see, one family has some 20-year-olds that occasionally will come home after 8 o'clock, 8:30 at night. Now we're going to have 20 to 30 cars, starting with, leaving at 8:30 to 9 o'clock at night, 4 nights a week. I get up at 4 in the morning, and I do it, I don't do a noble job like this. I just keep your lights on all day long. That's, nobody needs that. I throw that on top of COVID too. I have to have my rest to operate a nuclear power plant safely. So now I'm increasing this, and okay, they have land access to Woodrow Drive. Why not go through the wetlands? That's their biggest access of a Bridebrook. Why? Because it's cheaper. It would be very, very expensive to build a bridge through the wetlands to the minimal impact to go to their church. Have your church just go through the wetlands. Or the property, I'm sorry to say, to the gentleman that lives in Nathaniel Hale, it was part of theirs. So we'll have the property come from there. They can purchase more property in Nathaniel Hale and have a flag lot. I would be willing to purchase property back to them from them for what they paid in 2013. I believe, I'm a parishioner of St. Matthias Church. I'm pretty positive that that church is going to get closed. So there's an open space. It's a commercial. It's been a church for a long time. It's already a building. There's plenty of parking. There's plenty of stuff right there. We have plenty of buildings in the town. I grew up in the Midwest, and I saw building after building close. They build a new building and leave an empty building there. Great concern that, if things don't work out, which I think they will, but if they don't, you have a big building there. You're not going to put a single family home in there. Nobody's going to go in there with that, with all the asphalt and everything else. So I just get a lot of water, and there was no concern by the Wetlands Committee. It's very disappointing. They said, oh, the meeting was canceled. Well, guess what? When they approved it, they snuck it in on another meeting. Not any of us had heard anything about it, and yes, it's our responsibility to come and go and check the website every single day to make sure that the meeting update, but I think that was pretty shady by the town. I really do. So that's really all I have to say. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name and address for the record. Thanks.
My name is Marian Milner, and I'm at 1 Applewood Common in East Lyme. Good evening. I have two major concerns, as well as everything that was expressed here about this church coming in. The first is financial. The church will pay 0 property tax on this parcel of land and the building. Thus, not only would it not benefit the town financially, it'll actually take some of the town's money, if you will, or funds to help upkeep the roads, cutting all the trees back from the roads, and increasing the police department's responsibilities and the scope within our town. The increased traffic on Route 156, Bridebrook Road, and the Post Road will be increased dramatically with the influx of cars going in and out of a residential neighborhood of Woodrow and Bridebrook Road at all different times of day and night. We heard it about all the meetings that are going to be at night. This will significantly change the landscape of our neighborhood. These houses were here, they were not designed to have a big, huge commercial building in the middle of this property amongst all of the family homes and neighborhood and kids that play. The second very important life-changing impact in our town is the deforestation of our wildlife on this 21.7 acre parcel of land. Here in Niantic and East Lyme, there's a lot of wildlife in our forests. There's roughly 40 species of mammals. Examples of mammals are shrews, moles, bats, rabbits, hares, dogs. Also, there's 50 different species of reptile and amphibians, which are like turtles, snakes, lizards, frogs, that are all in that area. Of the birds, there are over 400 birds in our area. So my concern is if we allow the application of the Harvest Christian Fellowship of Niantic to come in, it would greatly increase traffic, and the biggest thing is it would destroy the landscape of our residential neighborhoods in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being so concise, too. Who's next? You have any other speakers? Very good.
Hi, my name is Ann Hickman, and I live at 256 North Bridebrook. And I just want to kind of agree with everything that everyone has said. And I really want this church to have a home. I understand they need a home. They do great work. I think they need some place to be, but I'm just not sure this is the right location for the size of their project. I'm concerned about the size of the church, the size of the parking lot. I just feel like it's going to expand. They want it to expand. I think that's great, but I just think they need a location that was designed for more people and more cars. So one thing that wasn't mentioned was pedestrians. So, you know, I agree with everything everyone said, but I live on this road. I walk my 2 dogs on this road every day. I see children on the road every day, strollers, babies. There are no sidewalks on this road. The road is sometimes maintained to cut the foliage on the side of the roads, but many times it's not. The bushes hang over the road. You don't have, you know, you're out there walking in the road. And I'm just super concerned that as time goes on and the church grows and grows, we're going to have all these new cars. And I know we said we looked at the cars, but I'm just concerned, being a resident, that already there's a lot of trouble walking. It's supposed to be 25. There's lots of kids out here, dogs, people. And I'm just concerned with the size of the project. I want them to have a home. I think they deserve a home, but I'm just worried it's going to expand and we're going to have a lot of traffic in this area. I just want to mention the egress that was mentioned, that little road. I sometimes walk my dogs through that little road and up into that field. That's a tiny little road. I just don't know how they're going to get a road. I'm looking and, you know, it's a little tiny road. And I don't know how you're going to have a big cars going back and forth there. I feel sorry for whoever has to live there. I mean, it's a tiny little road right there. And I think maybe if you could look at some other way to get to this location, but that's a tiny little road that wasn't designed to have two-way traffic even. It's a one-way road. It's one lane. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any others who wish to speak? Yes, sir.
Just one real quick here. Hi, my name's John Rebell. I live in 8 Nathan Hale Drive. Just want to underscore a couple of quick concerns. Worried about the security and safety given how often this facility is going to be vacant. Concerned about noise generally. Concerned about their growth plans. And I'm concerned about the aesthetics of what practically is a commercial facility. And I have one question. I'm wondering though about those 77 green giants. How tall will they be when they're planted initially? If that can be, you know, answered at some point, that would be interesting to me and other folks who live up there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody know the answer to that?
The applicant might, our zoning official might.
Typically, when you're planting, we require a minimum of 6 feet.
Okay.
As a minimum, and we actually often measure those because it's been our experience that some developments have a tendency to 5.5 footers and also 6. So we do check.
Yeah, I bought the 3s personally, you know, and they're going to take a while to grow. And I'm just wondering because it kind of slopes down, right? I can't really read those maps, but I'm wondering. I walk with my kids; they're pretty young, and we like to, you know, see it's beautiful landscape out there. Part of the reason why we moved to that location, and I'm wondering how tall those trees would need to be in order for me not to see that, you know, commercial building. So I don't know if that can be answered either by the engineer, probably doing some type of math that I can't do. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, I just have one question that I'd like to ask.
Let me just see if we have any other speakers first. Absolutely. Do we have any other speakers? Does anyone else wish to speak? Yes, sir. Is there anyone else after this gentleman that wishes to speak? No. Okay.
I'm Jay Ginsberg, 2 Applewood Common, East Lyme. And I agree with everything that's been said. I think this project is totally out of place in a residential area. The one thing I want to add, however, is that the town plan, the POCD, designates this area as a important piece of land that should be saved for environmental reasons. Bride Brook comes through that area, and to risk all of the effects it would have on our water supply and on the possibility of damaging the environment is something that also needs to be taken into account. So I want to add that to the list of what everybody else has been talking about.
Thank you. And do we have any other new speakers? We do have one.
Janice Ginsberg, 2 Applewood Common.
Janice
Ginsberg.
Ginsberg, thank you.
I've lived in the area for about 30 years, and I agree with everything that has been said thus far. I think the most important point is that this is basically a residential area, and I don't think that this is the type of project that should be a part of a residential neighborhood. I think there are other locations that could be found for this project, and I don't think this is the best location. I think it'll have an impact on quality of life for the neighbors. I think it'll have an impact on the environment and traffic and so forth. North Bride Brook Road is a narrow road. The traffic on there is dangerous. Cars do not obey the speed limits. They do not stop at the stop signs. And this will just increase, that sort of problem. So all in all, I don't agree that this should be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Any final new speakers or no? Has everybody had a chance to speak? Okay, and say it again? Absolutely. I want the applicant to have a chance to say a few words, comment, answer some of the points that were made by the public. If they so choose.
Yeah, well, of course we do. Do you want to do a 2-minute break first?
Let's do that. We'll take a 2-minute break. Thank you.
You're live again.
Okay, if folks would take their seats, we're going to continue. Thank you.
Okay, again,
At this point, the commission is going to give the applicant an opportunity to respond to some of the comments, some of the points that were made by members of the community. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, and we appreciate the opportunity to rebut. Again, for the record, Joe Wren, professional engineer. There's a lot of folks that spoke. I took notes. I have 2 pages of notes. A lot of it, as you know, was repetitive. So I'm not going to go through each point, but I'm going to try to do my best to cover all the bases. We started off with 6 Woodrow Drive, and notably they're the closest to the entrance, closest to the actual activity. If you look on that map, you'll see on their property and to the rear of their property are inland wetlands. Inland wetlands are not going to be cleared. All of that wooded buffer to the rear of their property is going to remain. There is no clearing proposed within the 100-foot buffer of that inland wetland, which takes you almost up to their front property line. So along that whole side, yes, there's some brush and there's some low areas, but there's nothing happening in that area other than planting these tall cypress arborvitae that the deer don't like to chew on. There are several, I think there are, if I remember correctly, 17 or so of those arborvitaes. They get very large in diameter and very tall, and they grow at a very quick rate. It's why we like to use them as a nice landscape buffer when we can. And if you notice on the plan, we do a sawtooth pattern too, so it's not just a one straight line. So it's a sawtooth pattern that protects the privacy and any visual impact from more angles than just being straight on. And that's usually recommended. This spot, this lot was part of the Nathan Hale Farm subdivision, so it's 1.7 acre parcel. It could be divided up into more lots. We all know it could be anything. We saw what happened on North Brybrook Road. This is a large piece of land. Yes, there are some limitations, but this could be any other type of development other than just a single church. It could be several houses. It could be multi-unit houses on this particular property as well. As far as safety, the maintenance of the power lines, the paving of this driveway actually improves dramatically the access that they have to that transmission line. There is an open field with ruts, cultivation there. They actually asked the church a couple of years ago if they could come in and put a gravel base in there so their trucks don't sink into the mud and they could get them in and out of there. If you look at the first section of our driveway, the site plan is not up right now, but the first section of that gravel road that they asked to leave in place off of the paved driveway is going to be paved now, so they have closer access for their machinery to get up there to maintain those power lines. The hydrant is there. It's shown to be relocated on the plan. That was discussed with the town. As far as snow removal, obviously someone coming to clear snow on the site is going to put the blade down so he could get in there. So he's going to be pushing the snow into the site instead of out of the site into the cul-de-sac. That just, from a practical standpoint, he's going to be pushing in to clear his path to get into the site and not out. A lot was mentioned, and again, I'm not going to go through every point. I'm just going to try to be as brief as possible. A lot of mention of quality of life and safety, hours and days of operation. I think I'll just, for 1 minute, I'll have the church come up in a moment and just discuss, again, I think it's important to reiterate, those groups that are during the week are very small groups. They're focus groups. Those focus groups are a certain group of members, and those don't expand. They don't double and triple and quadruple over really any amount of time. The congregation of the church right now is about 100 total people. That took them 27 years to get to 100 people. Not saying that it's going to take 27 more years to get to 200 people, but the growth rate is very slow, and they could speak to that point as well. The night activities, the lights and the noise, again, we showed you, we did a photometrics plan when the lights are on, not when the lights are off. Obviously, there's no light at all when the lights are off. When the lights are on, the photometrics plan shows no light spillage or trespass over the property lines. No excessive noise. We do have noise ordinances in town. Those will be complied with. It would just be regular traffic noise that goes by my house every night at whatever time at night. Increasing in crime outreach of the site, increasing crime was mentioned 2 or 3 times. It was mentioned a few times that the site is remote. I'm not sure, unless someone is going there for a strict purpose, I'm not sure how it's going to attract outside people. You could drive by at your 42 miles an hour on North Brybrook Road and never know this church is here. It was mentioned before that there's not a sign pointing people in, so why would people think there's somewhere to go to do crime at the end of the cul-de-sac road? It doesn't really make sense. There was the fireman, I didn't write everybody's name down, 1 Woodrow Drive. I met him out at the site as well, and I appreciate his duty as a fireman. I have utmost respect for that, especially 27 years. He spoke very eloquently about fire marshal issues. At the end of the day, this building will meet all codes, building codes, safety codes, fire codes, otherwise it can't get a permit to construct it. Whether there's a sprinkler or not, or it's compartmentalized, that will be up to our town staff to figure that out and issue the permits that are necessary in order for them to get a building permit. If they don't comply, they don't get a building permit and they can't build the building. The fire turning, again, we'll leave that up to the fire marshal. We feel that we have adequate turning with that T-shaped portion along the front of the parking area. But again, that was something that was brought up by the fire marshal, so we'll review that with him, and he will need to be satisfied before we can proceed. Just as a point of comparison, this building is 8,500 square feet, and talking to the builder of the church, that's all they do is build churches around the country, is church development services out of Virginia Beach. They built many, many churches. They tell us that this is pretty much the smallest church, the smallest model that they built. Generally, they're 10, 12, 15, 20,000 square feet. As you can imagine, down south, there's bigger congregations, there's larger buildings, but this, as compared to other churches, is a very small building. This building that we're in was built 40 years ago. It has approximately the same footprint as that building. There's 17,500 square feet on 2 floors in this building. There are no sprinklers over our heads, and this was built in 1972. Yes, there's a lot of brick, different materials, but again, it's a building twice the size and about the same footprint. No sprinklers overhead. As far as all the parking, you'll see on the site plan that we provided to you, we're providing more parking than what zoning actually requires. There's no plans to double the congregation. Again, we mentioned the very slow growth rate over 27 years. You know, if they get 5 or 10 or 20 new members, you know, over the next 3, 5, 10 years, I think that's something more in line with their goals that they could mention as well. Up on Nathan Hale Drive, there was some mention of view. There's no view easements over this property. There's no rights to any view over this property as far as we know with the surveys and so forth. Nathan Hale Drive is much, much higher than this property. I don't have the exact number without looking at all the Nathan Hale maps. But if you're all familiar with the cul-de-sac on Nathan Hale Drive, it's very high. Off the back of the cul-de-sac, it slopes very steeply down, and there are some houses that are currently being built off the end of the cul-de-sac, much lower than the street. And then the grade continues on that same slope, and this is much lower in elevation than even those houses that are lower than the road. So it's significantly lower than Nathan Hale Drive. I don't have the exact number, but it's not higher than or at the same level. It's you have to look down a pretty steep hill to be able to see it. The green giant arborvitaes, the information is on the plan as far as the quantity, the location, and the size. I think Bill's right. I think we have a 6-foot minimum on there, and that's what is compliant with the code, and that's what we're proposing to install. They do grow at a pretty good rate. If you look it up online, they'll say in a good environment they could grow as much as 2 feet per year. And I've seen them more than 20 feet tall. As far as childcare, the only nursery that's shown in there, and the church could speak to this too, is accessory to when there's a service going on, there's babies that are crying or small children that need to be attended to, they go in that location, correct? There's not a commercial daycare. They're not taking in kids to watch them, provide a daycare during the week. There's none of that. It's not in the statement of use purposely. It's only accessory to the primary use, which is the church when it's in service. As far as the lighting, we went through that several times about no light trespass. Instead of motion, if it's preferred that the lighting's on timers, that can be done as well. For security, sometimes the motion is nice. We know that there are deer, they're all in our properties and so forth, and they're probably going to continue to walk on this property. And they could certainly set off the motion light, but again, from Woodrow Drive, we have the existing wetlands and the wetland buffer as a vegetated buffer, and then we also have all those arborvitaes that we're planting. Up on the Nathan Hale Drive, they're way uphill, probably upwards of 30 or 40 feet upgrade, if I had to guess. And those arborvitaes will be along that back line as well for that landscaping. The services out, so there was a lot of mention, I think 3 or 4 people mentioned that we're bringing all these vagrants into this church, whether homeless people or people that are in trouble are considered to be vagrants, but we're bringing all this crime to the church. It was said by the church more than once that they do public outreach. They don't generally bring these people into the church, correct? They go out to New York City, they go out to New London, they go out to homeless people in town, and they outreach to them there. They don't invite them into the church. They're more than welcome to come when there's a service, but they don't physically go out and fill a bus and bring them to the church. The 72-car parking lot, again, that's on the plans. It's more than what the town requires. We don't feel that there's going to be any overflow. It more than exceeds the town requirement now. So there is a little bit of growth built in. I think they, what's the most parking spaces that you see right now? Used. On your Sunday Mass, what's the most number of parking spaces you see used?
It's about, well, our traffic guy, did it at 30 and 33 on Sunday.
Right.
But we're actually lower than that right now. COVID's, keeping people in, so.
Okay. So it sounds like the parking lot will be half full right now. 36 spaces, say 40 spaces. So they have 20, 30 extra built in for overflow. The access road will be signed for no parking due to the fire marshal. He already said that in his comments. If it's a requirement to sign Woodrow Drive too, if it's not already, would be willing to do that. But I don't see, and I don't believe the church ever sees, any overflow parking on Woodrow Drive and walking up the 500-foot-long driveway to get to the church. As far as drainage, I don't believe that wetlands or the town engineer overlooked drainage. There was a pretty thorough drainage report that was done by my firm, and there was a very thorough review that was done by the town engineer at the time. He provided review and comment to the Inland Wetlands Commission. Like I had mentioned before, the church is uphill of the Woodrow neighborhood. We're collecting all of that water, pervious and impervious, that drains to this, putting it into a basin. The basin has to fill up a certain amount before one drop of water is let off towards the wetlands. It's a standard outlet control structure for a retention basin. The water comes in, retains. If it doesn't get over a certain level in a storm, then nothing leaves the basin at all. If it gets up to a certain level, then there's a small hole about that big that just meters the water out slowly over time. All of that was reviewed and approved by the town engineer. We feel, and the town engineer agreed, and so did the Wetlands Commission, with their unanimous approval, that we're actually improving the local drainage, because everything that's coming off that hill, we're capturing and holding in that retention basin and just letting a little out over time. And that's what the computations show. The analysis and the town engineer agrees with that. Now, another interesting point to that, I have the drainage area map over there. Where Bride Brook crosses North Bride Brook Road, the overall drainage area is a minimum of 200 acres. So 200-acre watershed that all collects the water and comes to a very small diameter pipe that goes under North Bride Brook Road right now. So it doesn't take much, especially like a rain last night, to overwhelm that small culvert that's about that big going under North Bride Brook Road right now. Maybe that culvert needs to be enlarged. Maybe it needs to be a bridge, but it's a small old pipe. I walk by it all the time since I'm a nearby resident and walk on the road as well. So the flooding that Mr. Bukovich is seeing, a lot of that is coming from the 200-acre watershed, not the 3-acre piece that we're doing. The 200-acre watershed getting down to a very small pipe that's backing up and getting up or over North Bride Brook Road at that location. It acts as a dam with a small pipe, and it backs up into his backyard. The best way to improve that is to improve that culvert at that location. It's not coming from the site, and it won't be exasperated by this site, as agreed to or agreed with by the town engineer. A driveway through the wetlands, we showed you the map. The very first thing you have to prove to inland wetlands that there's no viable and feasible other alternative. So there's no way that any inland wetlands commission, including the East Lyme Wetlands Commission, would approve a driveway through the wetlands. There's a vernal pool over there. There's very wide wetlands. You have to cross Bride Brook and build a bridge or a culvert over the brook when there's a feasible and viable alternative at the end of Woodrow Drive. it would never be approved in wetlands. It's impossible, and it wouldn't even be a consideration. The state statute forces any applicant to show that there's no better feasible and prudent alternative, so you don't have to fill or destroy wetlands or clear in a wetlands area. That's why that site is chosen. Yes, it's less expensive, but it's much less damaging to the environment as well. Some discussion of property tax, burden of services. Any church in town, any religious institution, I believe, are protected by state law, I believe, so that they do not pay property taxes. It's not just Harvest Christian Fellowship, it's any church at all. As far as devastating, so some mentioned 21.7 acre lot, the whole thing just being an environmental tragedy. We're actually increasing the buffers to the current inland wetlands. We're not decreasing them. We're not proposing any permanent work inside those buffers. We're actually letting them grow back. And if you look on these plans carefully, you'll see that the entire 100-foot buffer, there's limited to no activity in there. We're just letting that grow back natural. The best thing for a wetland is a buffer to filter runoff as it goes toward the wetland area. There's no direct discharge of stormwater into the wetland area. And even with the sensitive vernal pool on site, it was all unanimously approved by this town's Wetlands Commission. Almost done here, just have a few more comments. As far as the pedestrians, I completely understand that. We live up on Harvest Glen and we walk down to North Brybrook all the time. The traffic study that was provided shows the posted speed limit is 25, 85% of the people are going 42 or lower. The other 15% of those people are going higher, right? So 1 out of every 6 or 7 people are going more than 42 miles an hour. So the road is very wide. It was recently resurfaced. There is a lot of room to move over because it's like a 30-foot wide road. But people don't slow down when they see, and that's an enforcement issue. It's not really anything that's caused or exacerbated by this particular project. Let's see, as far as the speed, again, we can't help that. That's just an enforcement thing. The maintenance and trimming along North Brybrook Road, same thing. That's a town maintenance concern. It has nothing to do with this particular application. Lastly, the aesthetics and the green giant arborvitaes. We already talked about the amount of those and the height of those. This architect, as far as the church goes with the massing and the scale, with the 2 separate wings and the higher center portion, feels that from his professional standpoint that if you have a church that's 8,500 square feet, not on 2 levels, on 1 level, this is as close to a residential massing as you can get. And lastly, as far as preserving this lot in open space, the church looked long and hard. I first started working with them in 2010, so 11 years ago. Looked at several different sites around town. It just wasn't working for various reasons. They found this site. They purchased this site. They paid off the land, correct? So they don't owe, because there were some other financial concerns brought up. They paid off the land. They own the land outright. They rolled the dice and took a chance. It was available. It was a 21-acre lot. Any property owner around there, either aggregately or individually, could have purchased it at that time. But the church was the successful purchaser of that property. The town, if it's in the POCD and it's one of those earmarked properties for open space, the town could have purchased it. It was available for sale. I think the whole acreage was $120,000, correct? $120,000 for that acreage. It was available. It wasn't just given to them or just earmarked for them. It was available to the general public. The last point is, with that, it's a 21.7 acre lot. They're building on, even with the temporary disturbance for construction, if I draw a line along the silt fence that we have, that's not really at the edge of the permanent construction, but giving room for construction maneuvering and so forth. The total footprint is about 4 acres, or a little less than 4 acres. The other 17.7 acres of this lot is not touched. There are no plans to touch it. It is going to remain. So the frogs, the turtles, the deer, everything, the bear, I had in my backyard. The bear coming down North Brybrook Road, that's all over social media in East Lyme, as you know. All of that has a large percentage of this land open with wetlands and buffers to wetland. This is probably one of the best, the neighbor that's in support of this, so this is probably the best alternative that you can have. It's going to be developed, it's developable property, it's going to be something. The question is, what is it going to be? It's 21 acres. A developer most likely wouldn't just build one house there, or wouldn't really be viable for that. He would build multiple houses or multiple units in a residential area, which could be done. So with that, I think I'm just going to, I don't think Dave has to say any more, right? I think he covered it very eloquently regarding his report. I would just like the church, I would just like for you to hear it from them about their plan, about their focus groups during the week, the traffic, and again, it's 19 total hours that they plan out of 168. Could that get to be a little bit more? Yes. I don't think they would be proposed to a restriction that if they got to, if it was even possible, if they got to, 30 hours a week, that they would come back to you, if that was even a potential process. But they don't have any plan to do more than 19 hours a week now. That's the most in a week if you add everything up. And I think they would be happy with that. Correct? Thank you.
You want to say a few words, but I don't think you need to restate the facts that you've already presented that are on the record in terms of the 19 hours and
No,
things like that.
I won't restate. Pastor Hyde again. And
Thank you.
I just want to thank everybody. And I understand, not fully because I'm not you, but it's your neighborhood and everything. And I'm not trying to hurt anybody. Something to remember is the nation's struggling. It would take you to give. That would be tough. I mean, if I was where you're at, it'd be tough. I know what you're saying. The nation is really struggling. People are struggling. I could have went to Waterford. I could have went to New London. Waterford very quickly to pastor and found buildings there. I'm called here. That's why I stayed 27 years. I have fellow pastors that already had buildings. They're already my age, close to retirement. I was called here. I have the education, I have the credentials, everything. I was just called here. And these people are hurting. I'm not going to New London to bring the homeless or drug addicts down here. We have them here. It's us. We're the guys that are messed up. And so that's the message that I preach. Let's look at statistically at growing. It's not going to grow. I've been here 27
Pastor, could
years.
you please address us?
27 years I've been here. And I painted everybody's house here. I raised 4 children, and I pastored churches, and I heard everybody's problems here. Nowhere else in this country. Could have went down south. That's how those guys are big guys, because you can grow a church like that. I stayed here. To people who said they don't need any help. Yeah, I got the money, I got the education, I don't need any help. Why do we have all the drugs we have? Why do we have all the junk going on in our society? I stayed here. So I'm just saying this, we go the way of Europe, which is the way we're going. Statistically, the churches are in decline. They all are. They're having financial problems. My church is not. And I'm not going to say exactly why, but my church is not. But we're in decline, churches are, because of COVID and because we're falling right behind Europe. Atheists and the non-believers are on the increase. But I'm called here. But it would cost us. It cost me. And I'm not saying it's easy for them. But that's something to consider, is that I stayed for a reason. I'm still going to stay. Go ahead and shoot this thing down. I'm going to stay. I'm going to build a church. I'm going to build a church. I'm going to keep reaching people. They call me up and say, I feel like killing myself. I've just taken too much drugs. I've done this and that. And that's here. That's not in New London. That's here. So I'm called here. And I understand the hurts. And I pray it goes through, and I pray that it doesn't hurt you. I don't want to hurt people. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll give you about 30 seconds or a minute, ma'am. Go ahead, okay? Because I think we gave you a lot of time. Go ahead.
Yes. So as you see, this project impact my family, myself the most, right? I kind of listen. I want to see the address my concern, but I didn't. right? They respond to some questions, but I did not hear anything address my concern at all. But I'm the most impacted by this project. I did not hear it. I add in 2 points there, right? The traffic, right? With the 100 more unit, the condo unit down to the road, so there's more traffic they did not counting at this moment. So when you make a right turn, so this is Woodrow Drive, right? This is North Brybrook, right? When you make a left turn, you need to watch for this side, right? But you cannot see it right because the road is curved. You cannot see it. You can go to my neighbor to try to make a left turn, and you cannot see it because the road is like bending like that. And then the cars rush into this road, a lot rush into it. So with the condo unit down to the road, there's much more traffic there, right? The gentleman, he did not count for that. Even to cut the tree on the number 2 of our neighborhood won't improve that vision, make the left turn, right? You cannot see because the road is bended. Okay, this is the first point. It's a very important safety. The second one, the water, right? The first wetland hearing, right? So for family, our neighborhood talking about already the water get into the house. Look at that plan. If the water cannot stay in there, the water will be directly put into my home. You look at the map. The water will come to my home directly. Okay, so that's my house, not just the traffic, the safety and also the water. And then my neighborhood already have water problem right now without concrete cement on the ground. Okay.
You are being repetitive.
Yes.
Thank you.
So that's my really concern. But the wetland committee, they sneaking through to approval for that permission because they canceled the meeting last minute without notice us. Okay. Just sneak through for permission without concern, without address our concern. So I'm hoping this committee will listen to our voice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think it was stated on the record in regards to traffic that there has not been a single accident recorded at that intersection. Is that correct? Is that what you said earlier?
Yes, for the record, David Sullivan. There has not been an accident recorded in the past 3 years.
Thank you.
And you did include the future development up the road?
We did include the new development, yes.
And the study was done pre-COVID?
And the base traffic counts were done pre-COVID, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just have a quick question on that.
How
did you have the...
We're going to give each of you an opportunity to come to the podium again. I think this gentleman over here had raised his hand first, that's all. Unless you want to defer to the other gentleman. Okay, sure.
Just so you all know, I'm going to time you.
Ready? Jason Urban, 1 Woodrow Drive. I would just like to know if the traffic study that they did on Sundays was done in summer months when there's an increase in traffic on North Brybrook from leading to Rocky Neck. It is, as you said, a major artery in this town, and it is a cut through to Rocky Neck. So were traffic studies done on Sunday in summer months? And that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to speak to that specifically? That'd be great.
The traffic counts were taken in October. I just point out again, it's level of service A, so this is not a traffic volume situation. So even if traffic volumes were to double on Woodrow and double on North Brybrook, you would still have acceptable levels of service. But they were done in October, which is considered the typical time of the year. It's not high and it's not low.
And we had a gentleman that wished to speak again briefly, no?
Yeah. I guess I just had a question. The study was done in 2019. I thought that the 80 unit thing was recently approved, so how was that taken into account?
I think the initial study, go ahead, go ahead. If you want to go ahead and speak to that, that'd be great.
Yeah, the base counts are made in 2019, and then we grow those a certain percentage each year to get to the development year of the church, and then we add the traffic that was estimated for the developments that aren't built yet, and we add that traffic on top of it.
I really didn't want to belabor the point, but there were a couple things that were stated as fact that I'm not sure are. The statement that anything could go there under section 5.1 of the building code, there's 5 things listed. There isn't a multi-family house development. It says single-family dwelling, forestry, nursery, agriculture. So anything that was stated in excess of that would require another special permit and a hearing, I believe. So that's one question. The light spillage diagram clearly shows numbers on property right down in the lower left corner. So the statement that there's no light spillage, it shows it on that. I also question this because there's lights on the backside here that have zeros next to them. How do you have 0 light spillage right next to a light? We said drainage will decrease right here. Drainage volume runoff, eastern edge, it increases on every storm level. And then lastly, also I think stated in the building code, there was some question about childcare facility. It states that it's just anything where there's 12 plus children unattended or attended by someone else other than their parents. There's classrooms, there's clearly going to be instances where that meets that definition. So I understand that it's not going to be a nursery or it might not be a daycare facility, but it meets the definition per those regulations within this code. That's all I wanted to clarify. Sorry, Stephen Wolf, 19 Nathan Ave.
Thank you. Does the applicant want to speak to that, that accessory use of the childcare, daycare, or really it's not quite that. It's supervision provided while there are services going on for the adults, is how I understand it.
Again, for the record, Joe Wren, if you would like to hear directly from them, you can on that. That is definitely not the primary use, and that's not what the application says. It's an accessory use for the primary use of the church. So that's one of the main points that you have to use for a decision. As far as the actual use, again, I tried to explain it before. We'll let them do that directly. The light was done by a professional lighting consultant. The property lines are shown on there. All along all the property lines, it's 0.0. So if there's one close to a light, I'm not really sure. It's a full cutoff, so maybe on the back side of the light there is not much light. It's just down and out to the point of where you want the light. But the important thing is that at all the property lines it's 0. For the drainage, I'm not sure the increases. There's a certain design storm that we have to, whether it's 25 or 50 year, I don't recall. We're allowed to, we design up to that level. If there's increases after that, you're allowed to, the regulations say up to a 25 or 50 year storm event, no increase, and then over that 100 year, 200 year, 500 year, 1,000 year, you can't design feasibly for that stuff. So it's consistent with the regulations. It was reviewed and approved by the town engineer. Lastly, as far as multi-family housing, we saw it happen on the other end of North Brybrook Road. It's affordable housing, 830G. You could do it on any piece of land anywhere in any town. Some limited in industrial districts, but we all know, and you as a zoning commission specifically, you can do that anywhere. We have 80-something units down on North Brybrook Road. Yes, they do have SOAR. Can you do 30 or 40 here? Possibly. It would be septic system. We would have to do layouts, but it's 20 acres of land, and yes, there could be multi-family unit there. And basically, the regulations are set aside. Zoning regulations are set aside with an 830G affordable housing for developer incentive. So 30% of those units are set aside for affordable units. As you know, 70% could be sold at market. And even the height of the building, you don't really have purview over the height or the setback. So we could be 10 feet to a property line, we could be 45 feet tall. And the zoning commission has no purview over that. So as far as multifamily, yes, it could happen here. 5 years, 10 years, next year, who knows? But that is potential possible use on that property. So just quickly let Harvest Christian Scott Long just talk about the daycare accessory use, and then we're done.
11 o'clock? Well, we're probably gonna have to continue. I'd like to close the public hearing if we can, but I feel like we're right there. Yeah.
30 seconds about the daycare. And
go ahead.
Very, very simple. My name is Scott Long, 34 Legendary Road. Again, to address nursery and classrooms and very, in bringing that up in a commercial setting, I think one of the things that needs to be thought of is, are people paying us to take care of their children? And the answer is no, they never have. The secondary thing is we are family oriented. We want families to come to our church. And if you have young children and you don't have a place to take them, are you going to stay at our church? And the answer is no. You're going to go somewhere that you have a place. We are specifically making a very comfortable location for mothers to take care of their children, fathers to take care of their children. It doesn't have to just be mothers, but specifically nursing mothers. We have 2 separate rooms, one so that you can nurse in a private location. You don't have to worry about exposing yourself whether you want to or not. That's not the point there. The second is the classrooms. They are classrooms, yes, but while we're doing our church for adults and older children that can understand what we're talking about, we have the children go out and they have children's church. So it's still a church environment and they're still learning about Christ. And that's why we have all these divisions inside the building. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I have just a couple of questions for Mr. Wren.
That'd be great. Mr. Peck.
The lady at 10 Woodrow, 6 Woodrow, the next door neighbor.
Yeah, 6 Woodrow Drive.
She was worried about, she mentioned the drive is parallel to their driveway. Would it, if this is approved, would the applicant consider putting some trees along that strip that parallels the driveway? It looks like about a 12-foot strip of land between their lot and the drive. To extend those arborvitaes down that strip.
Depending on the width of the strip, I don't believe that the church would have a problem doing that in between the driveways, as long as they don't get too large where they start to encroach the driveways.
The arborvitaes are kind of thin.
The green giants are meant to be wide and tall, so we can do other more columnar arborvitaes there, yes.
The second question, there was a mention of people going back there in the middle of the night and parking, which is a pretty attractive spot for that activity. Would the applicant consider a gate?
I don't know. I haven't even thought of it before. Maybe a chain or something like that.
Something. Okay.
So I'm hearing that they would. But again, to my point that I made earlier, someone that's not in this room is not going to know that there's a church there. You're driving by on North Byward Road at 42 miles an hour. That's a.
You'd be surprised, my friend.
That's a. So.
Build it and they will come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
But yes, they said that they would consider that if it's. I mean, they like to. Obviously not have a gate, but if that is a requirement, I'm sure that they would consider that, yes.
Thank you. Now, I just have a suggestion for the board. I was interested in Jason, who spoke about the fire problems. I would like to have him put that in writing and have us submit that to the fire marshal and get comments. Even though the project appears to be within the code, there may be, I think there was some good points made.
I agree.
And I would like to see that spelled out in writing, and let's get an opinion and continue the public hearing.
How does everybody feel about that?
It's very fair.
Certainly.
Ma'am?
Clear,
No.
clear up everything now, yep.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record regarding the fire issues, one point.
Yeah.
Whether it's sprinkled or not is not the purview of this commission.
Right.
So my fire marshal has had input, and Mr. Wren has addressed his comments.
Right.
Certainly, it's up to the commission what you choose to do, but I just wanted to make sure I put that in, that has been looked at. There's been some lengthy conversation. Fire marshal was in my office like 3 days ago.
In addressing what you're saying right now, is I did not have a copy of his recommendations that Mr. Wren was reading from.
Right.
So I did not get a chance to
Right,
read that,
because
and I would
generally-
love to see that.
Generally, the fire piece is not our purview.
Right.
Again, the sprinkler drilling is outside our purview, that's building code. and fire
I wasn't
code.
thinking about sprinklers. I was listening to the logistics of the parking lot, maneuvering fire trucks, and so forth. There were a couple of points that
Very
I would
much.
like to hear another opinion on.
Which our fire marshal did bring up, and I wanted to make sure I cleared those issues up, so whatever the commission chooses is appropriate.
I agree with Mr. Peck,
Okay.
being a former driver of the engine myself.
I trust our fire marshal. At the same time, I recognize that this gentleman has 27 years of experience and to many of us may qualify as an expert in his own right. And he's offered what sounded like a very well-founded opinion and made some pretty strong statements about his feelings about this project and his concerns from a fire safety point of view. And so I wouldn't be averse to doing so. I think ultimately we're going to get the right answer and the right outcome. So,
Mr. Chairman, just one quick second on that point.
Sure.
So first of all, they can't get a building permit and build it without the fire
Without a
marshal's sign off.
question. Without
He
a
goes through every single code there is.
Right.
He's already brought up some of the points that have been brought up by the public as well.
Right.
Those issues have to be worked out before they can get a building permit.
Down the
Otherwise,
road.
they're not
That's right.
even putting a shovel in the ground.
Right.
So that's one point. Secondly, our land use attorney just mentioned that, if you so choose, another option would be to act on the application. And if you were to so choose, act in a certain way, it could make that a condition of the approval that they would have to comply with, which they have to for the building permit anyway. So it's kind of redundant.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's just another option that you have.
Certainly is.
The fire codes are not perfect, okay? If there's something that is physically a little different outside the code, it happens.
So what are you suggesting? I'm getting lost here.
I would like Jason to put his comments in writing and have them submitted to the fire marshal, or a sit-down discussion, practical discussion about the ideas.
And then come back to the board?
That's what I was thinking, yep.
But doesn't he already, didn't he already review everything?
Yep.
Yes.
Either way, I think we're looking at continuing this evening, and my thought might be that if Jason wanted to prepare something along those lines and submit it to town staff to share with the fire marshal and go that route instead of through the commission.
Yeah.
Since it's really something that is outside of our purview.
Right.
That's my thought. I like the way you're thinking. I'm just trying to flush it out in a way that makes the most sense.
Not necessarily outside our purview.
Right.
Safety of the community
Right.
is in our purview.
Sure.
And if he reviewed the building for fire safety, it could comply. We've had something else come up that said, what if the parking lot's filled with cars and people are in the building and the truck can't get in? Was that reviewed? We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's a question, that's a fair question.
As a rule, we tend to trust our fire marshal, though, right?
But was that considered?
Right.
We don't know.
Right.
Well, it can't hurt.
Yeah, it can't hurt. We get reports from town engineers, town staff. The fire marshal is town staff.
Right.
Why not have his opinion submitted to us and have some of the points that Jason brought up?
That's fair.
Mr. Chairman, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
the church has waited 8 years to be at this point.
Right.
We got our Wetlands Commission earlier this year.
Right.
On behalf of them, I think I can say that they want this to be safe for the community and themselves as
Right.
well. So waiting one more month to continue to the next is not a problem.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, then one last thought from my perspective.
Mr. Mulholland, yes.
If you choose to continue it, would you continue it for the sole purpose of receiving additional information from the fire marshal? Otherwise, you will repeat your public hearing.
Right. No,
Oh,
You could-
That's the stipulation. Yeah.
I think our land use attorney will agree that even if you close the public hearing, you still could receive information from staff.
Right.
It's true.
Is that right?
I'd like to try to close the public hearing tonight. I think
Actually,
See, I
that
think
is
she wants
true,
to s- I
but
think she
we've
wants
had
to say
meetings
it.
before to where I've tried to ask questions to certain individuals. And unfortunately, I was unable to supply materials that I found because we closed the public hearing.
But you were bringing more evidence. There's a difference.
From outside.
Right, which was presented to us after.
Yeah, I remember
So
that.
then I tried to submit information and I was told I could not. So
Right.
I'd like to see us continue the public hearing so that if we do have opinions from the fire marshal, we or I can look into and address them. If we close the public hearing and we hear something that we want to address, we cannot give our opinions towards that.
Yes.
So I would like to see us, I agree, to continue the public hearing.
Until you-
Otherwise, we can't give our information if we come up with it.
But are we continuing it for the specific purpose of hearing from the fire marshal? Seeing those recommendations in writing where some of the points, some of the concerns raised by Jason are addressed?
Yes, I agree,
It's for
because,
that sole purpose?
yes, because a lot of what is being said tonight is repetitive on
Correct.
people.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
for the fire marshal.
Hey, just one point of clarification, now, as a commission member, you're still able to speak if the public hearing is closed. Just the public or outside consultants can't
But I cannot
offer
submit any
information.
evidence.
I don't know
was
about
told
that.
last time.
So that, Sylvia Rakowska for the record, I'm counsel for the church. You're correct that if you did close a public hearing today, no evidence, including any Jason's letter, could be submitted. So whatever evidence you have is it. Yeah, so even a writing of what's been submitted today wouldn't be appropriate to submit afterwards. Also, it also disadvantages the applicant from having an opportunity to comment or approve conditions or anything else. So if you are looking to entertain any additional information, it should be continued.
All right. All right. So you're essentially requesting that it be continued if we're going to consider additional info. Got it. Okay.
For the purpose of receiving,
Correct.
Fire marshal.
Correct. Correct. Recommendations from the fire marshal.
Just
All right.
one second, just 1 second. I promise.
1 second, your time's up.
So,
I'm
Ma'am.
smiling just for the record.
Ma'am, it's 20 of 11. I just don't want you to be repetitive. If you have something new to say,
yes,
what is that? Go ahead.
so,
Step up to the podium, and if you have something new to say, if you don't, I'm going to cut you off. I'm sorry.
yes. So, if you prove for that one, I will take back my land from the circle, okay? I have part of my land there, and then my neighbor will do that. There's no cul-de-sac, there's no circle there. So one straight line to the over there, okay? That's all I'm going to do. If you are continue for this project, I will take my land back. There's no circle there, okay?
Thank you.
That's fair.
That's my land there.
Put a fence up.
Yes.
It's your
And then
property.
the tree is not enough. There's no room for build the trees between the driveways, okay? If you measure the entrance, there's no room.
All right. Do you want to make a motion to continue the public hearing with that condition?
I would love to make a motion to continue the public hearing of Harvard, hold on. What? Pardon me.
I would like to
For
second
the
that.
special permit for Harvest Christian Fellowship. He seconded it.
We have a second?
I do.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right. Opposed, abstentions, everybody agrees. We're going to continue this public hearing and to be continued. We took a lot of testimony tonight. We've got a pretty robust public record, maybe more than we anticipated, to be quite frank. We appreciate the public sentiment. We understand that there were more people here that were in opposition, but at the same time, we also know that the vast many members of the church, of the fellowship, who would have loved to have come here and spoken did not. So,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
We didn't ask Jason if he agreed to put it
We volunteered Jason without asking him. All right. Jason, you want to put some things in writing?
You know who to send it to, so.
Certainly. Very good. All right, moving on. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I learned a lot from you. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
For the next meeting, you know, I'm from China, okay?
Yes.
I'm learning how that.
We thank you, but we have to continue.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Appreciate your input, your participation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, wise guy. Thank you. Please just remember, we're still in a meeting.
Okay.
So,
Yep, we got to go.
all right, see you next time.
All right. So a regular meeting will be continued as well, obviously, and we'll move on to the approval of the minutes of August 5th, 2021. I was absent for that meeting, so if someone would like to make a motion.
I move we approve the minutes of August 5th, 2021.
A second.
All right.
Hi, Brooke.
Terry seconds. All those in favor? I'm not sure who is here. We got a. Take a look. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, I'm going to abstain, so I think, did Norm say aye also? Was Norm at the last meeting? August 5th, okay. 501.
Mr. Chairman, point of clarification, I was here but not seated.
That's okay.
But I was here.
You were here.
Okay.
You're a member of the commission, so
Yes.
you were here, so 501. Old business, none. New business, any business on the floor, if any by the majority vote of the commission. Does anybody have anything tonight? We've had a pretty busy night.
Does anybody have food?
Oh, yeah. Hey, I saw two new people come in, open up some stores recently, and they were they praised the hell out of him. And I thought I'd mention it. You did a good job with two of the people I talked to.
He has for a very long time.
Somebody said something nice.
That's the only two I can remember.
Is this microphone still on?
And I'll just say, for your purposes, Bill and staff in town, I do a lot of traveling on my job. I travel all around the state. I travel into Lower Mass. I travel into Rhode Island. I've seen hundreds of Dollar Generals. And the Dollar General we have in Flanders that has been under some scrutiny and criticism from people in this town is probably one of the nicest, if not nicest, Dollar Generals I've seen in the tri-state area. When I say tri-state, Mass, Connecticut, southeastern Rhode Island. So great job by you and the staff, and it's a really nice looking Dollar General as Dollar Generals go.
But the one in Niantic.
And they have a right to be there, so we've got Dollar General.
Even with those phony windows, huh?
I just want to say that
terrible.
we did, our firm did the Dollar General.
Yeah.
So we were guided by Bill, and that's why the building and the site looks like.
Which Dollar General?
This one.
Uptown.
Yeah.
Oh, you were involved with that?
Yeah.
Nice.
You should have made it look like better windows, just saying.
Yeah, they were good.
Hey, good job, good job.
Everything from the positioning, the way it's faced, when you come in, down Boston Post,
Yeah.
and it's just, it's very unique looking. It's very unique.
I will say this, Mr. Wren was very helpful
Yep.
on the architectural side in helping to encourage
Yep.
the developer to do better.
It can be hard. And thank you for doing that. We live in this town and
you.
appreciate that. And you do too. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night. Comments from our zoning official. You have nothing tonight? Our ex officio bowed out on us about 9:45. She tried to hang on, but the public hearing went a little too long for her. Comments from zoning board liaison to planning. We had Terry on August 10th.
They basically just talked about our zoning referrals. Really, that was about it, in all honesty.
All right. Kim's coming up September 14th. I'll shoot an email reminder to her. And then comments from chairman. I really don't have anything. This is kind of like we're back in the saddle tonight. After I know I missed the August 5th meeting. There were some things going on there. That was a busy meeting. We had some town business and town attorney, etc. So people had to have their thinking caps on. But tonight was a return to something I haven't experienced in quite a while. So
One thing that I will say, to everybody, is to speak into the microphone.
yeah.
because I know I attended the selectmen's meeting last night, and granted, we don't broadcast, I mean, we only record, but there's trouble hearing, so.
Yep.
I have a quick question.
And really good questions, everybody, really good questions, good participation, everybody here, everybody participated, really nice job. Thank you. And good patience, we exhibited great patience tonight, yes we did.
So I tried tonight to follow everything on the tablet, and I was trying to go paperless. It is so hard. It's so hard.
I've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
I get it, save the trees all out, I get that. But in the end, when you arrive here, you all need to know what's going on. You need to get through all the information there so you can go through it.
I would not mind packets the first time, but we do not have repetitive paper after, if we continue it.
But just.
No, I know, I get it, I brought mine too, just in
And I
case.
end up scrap paper.
I got it.
Everybody brings their stuff, which they don't
I got it.
Yeah,
Yes.
so.
All right.
Good.
Good. Take a motion to adjourn?
No, we had a question though. We had one.
Oh.
Oh, no, in our meeting, we passed that motion last time that said we'd schedule a hearing as soon as possible. I just didn't want to forget about that.
On the accessory use
Yeah.
issue, yeah, it's a great question, great point.
Deep discussion with the town attorney, and we agreed to disagree, and I have indicated that the commission has spoken, and his function is to support the commission and show up and do what we've asked. I'll leave it at that.
Very good.
It's coming.
Yep. We like him, he does a good job, but we can disagree.
That meeting is going to be great. You better get a couple of cops here, I swear to God.
You're gonna be out of control again?
Yep, I'm telling you.
I'll take a motion to adjourn. So moved.
When we talk about.
We have a second.
When we talk-
Let's go home and
All in
go to
favor?
bed.
Aye. Aye.